Hello and welcome to Dad and Sons. Today we got Liam.
Hello.
And we got George.
Hello.
But today also we got a Can you actually hear that through the mic? We have a special guest. Raycevick,
Yeah,
the lore master for Halo. How you doing? How you doing today?
Hello. My name is Xperia. I'm really happy to be here as the lore master of Halo, and I'm going to be just continuously. Okay, I can't continue this up. Hello, how's it going? I was actually just talking the other day about how many fucking Halo books there are, and that I've only read one of them about 10 years ago when I was barely even capable of reading, and I should probably rectify that in more recent years.
I've heard that they're not bad, that they're like some pretty solid sci-fi thumpers. I don't know, what do you call like a good book that you read through fast that you thump down on the table when you're done?
The short read.
Yeah, what do you call your Doom 2 book? Which I still, every time I go to a bookstore, I just deliberately just check to see if there's a copy around, just in case.
Surprisingly okay, I don't know, like... That thing transcends genres. It was an action, comedy, feel-good, like, children's movie, but also not. It had an uplifting message at the end. It had thoughts on, like, theology and because of the Mormonism angle.
Yeah, it's really bizarre to imagine that style of story with the new graphics and, like, audio design of the recent Doom games.
I also like the idea. of what Raycevick said about since he has been able to read properly, which like makes him 12 years old essentially since Halo.
I only became 12 years old when I actually aged 25, so it's like I age at half the time. I'm trapped
My growth
in there.
as a human being completely correlates with when I was able to start reading Halo books, and then I evolved.
Yeah, all I recall from Follow Reach was basically John had a pretty shitty childhood, being raised to pump full of drugs with a bunch of other Spartan kids, and that's about all I can recall.
Speaking
and not
of which,
really anything else.
Halo Reach on PC. I've probably played less of it than everyone else here, but I think we've all been playing a little bit of it over the past few days.
Well, it's only been out a day, right?
Yeah, it's one of those games where like I hop into it thinking, oh, I'll play this for a little bit with friends to go like with the nostalgia, but then because there's about 5 different groups I know that are also hopping on for the nostalgia train, I end up jumping between all those, and sure enough, I played it for about 8 hours. Which is funny because I also started Need for Speed Heat, and there's a trial on there. Like, oh, I'm enjoying this game. I'll probably play it for a little while. Halo Reach comes out. I've already played it for double the time in a single day compared to 5.
I've somehow managed to skip this one along the series, but I'm really looking forward to spending some time with a Halo game again. I believe it was last year, or was it last year and a half ago? When was El Dorito getting tossed around the shadiest rapid share servers of the internet back?
That was about a year and a half ago, and the theory for some time has been that that might have been the catalyst to encourage them to put it on PC, because
it's like clockwork.
I can just imagine the people at Microsoft seeing El Dorito be like on the top 3 on Twitch and just being like, guys, why isn't that us that is on there? Why is that just a random fan game?
And look at us now spending real money on real Halo games that are coming out about a year and a half after that fiasco.
Yeah. No, the El Dorito thing was very fascinating to see, just because I also know one of the people that's very heavily behind it. It was very interesting to see essentially multiple angles of that development, where it did start off as a very quiet thing that just continued. And what was even more interesting was hearing that those people that are in that sector have a lot of connections to people at 343. And then it seemed like that 343 were not putting in any effort to like really shut this down. And you really got the sense that it wasn't their call to put in that request, but it was simply Microsoft. And the other thing too is a real piece of that story that keeps getting misconstrued or mislabeled or misinformation or whatever, is that they got a cease and desist, and they actually didn't. Like, they didn't get a takedown order that was saying, hey, you better shut down this fucking game, we're going to sue you. It was mostly just like, hey, guys, what we think is you're doing is really cool. It's a really great game. unfortunately kind of falls into our legal thing. So could you please maybe not continue development on that?
So it was more of a shakedown than an official statement.
It's more like it was more basically essentially a request. Like no one got sued or anything. No one was taken to court or anything like that. It was not nearly as dramatic essentially. Like people made it sound like, I remember the day that came out, I was getting messages all over my feed of people saying, oh, you better get the footage of El Dorito while you can because it's going to go away. And it's not. You can still play it to this very day. It never got taken down or anything like that. It's just, it was stopped being officially supported by the developers on request.
I never used it, and I've never really have much experience with Halo beyond fucking around with it on the Xbox back in the day a little bit. Halo was always kind of like a guilty pleasure for me. It was like I played shitty JRPGs and Nintendo games, and like Halo was like
you were not the core demographic.
Game.
Yeah.
And then I got an Xbox 360 when I was in university, and then Halo Reach, very specifically Halo Reach. Why I'm enjoying today so much is Halo Reach was like my Halo. Like to me, it was super weird. Like I didn't really have much affinity for 1 through 3, even though I'd actually played them all like with friends, but it was not something I really cared about. But Reach, I got so into the multiplayer and the campaign and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it was like my Halo. And to see it come out for PC and not only like start feeling nostalgia about it because of all the maps and stuff, but my favorite mode being SWAT and just playing SWAT continually with keyboard and mouse controls now. It's a joyous experience.
The best way, the first way, the quickest, easiest way you're able to tell you're playing Halo on PC is if you're playing with a controller and everyone else in the server just seems to be doing better than you by default.
Yeah, the discussion of, oh, the controllers might have an advantage because of their strong aim assist to me was complete bullshit. And I say that as someone that did half and half my 8-hour session on both, because I did initially start with a gamepad originally because I remember, because that's how I played El Dorito, because I think Halo 3 in particular felt a little awkward on PC just because of how floaty the jumping is and stuff like that. But in the case of Reach, a lot of the controls just map really well. And once you got everything rebinded and set and you got your mouse sensitivity and stuff like that, it all feels really good. And snipers are definitely insane when you see someone that is particularly good with centering their screen.
Being able to pre-aim at the precise point of the screen where other players are behind scenery is always going to win out over waiting for enemies to walk into your crosshair on a controller.
There was something about like playing SWAT and just when you come up against a good team, I mean, it's only been like a day, but when you come against a group of people who know what they're doing, you have no chance. You just get fucking sniped from everywhere. But if you start getting into a groove and you start feeling like you're playing a PC shooter, you start like really getting into it, and you kind of forget you're playing Halo a little bit sometimes. You're like, it's kind of just an FPS on a PC. But it's enjoyable.
I love the bouncy feel of these games on a controller, though. The Halo bounce is such a nice feeling.
And the movement, to me, just always feels better on the pad in those games as well, because the games were very clearly designed for it. They were very clearly meant to be mapped to that analog stick and relying on a lot of crouch jumps and stuff like that.
Slayer has been a bit more difficult than SWAT. SWAT is a bit more traditionally like an FPS shooter. You shoot somebody in the head, they usually die. Whereas Slayer has been a little more awkward with keyboard and mouse because of the continual reactionary, like moving back and forth, throwing grenades, and like moving in for, a pummel or a melee attack or something like that. There's a lot more like fluid movement you need in a game mode like Slayer, where you're bringing people's shields down and you're trying to hide and then react to what's happening with them. And the keyboard and mouse, you can't quite get that. Like moving back and forth, pressing W and S isn't exactly as easy as having the 360 degree of, an analog stick to move and also swing the camera around. So it has been a little awkward playing Slayer. Not like bad, but good.
It's why I think though that the gamepad is still viable though. Like, because in both cases, in both controller setups, I never really felt like I was at a disadvantage in either case. I felt like both setups were gaining me in one area and
Yeah.
losing me in another, which was a nice thing to have. And it's really interesting to think about because even just doing the Call of Duty 4 video I did recently, I found out that even in interviews for that, Infinity Ward were being asked about crossplay because Microsoft pitched the idea to them. Because obviously this is when Microsoft were trying really hard to pitch together Windows Vista
the Halo
and
2
Xbox Live together with Windows
Vista
Service.
exclusive.
Yeah, it was that same era. And Shadowrun with the crossplay on that. Like, they were really trying to push that hard. And Infinity Ward, when they heard the idea, they just said, absolutely not. Like, they had no interest. They were going like, yeah, there's no way that we're going to have PC players on COD versus console players instead. It's interesting to see because as times have gone on, as games are very much more about just getting as many people onto your product as much as possible.
Like 161,000 concurrent players today.
That whole sentiment has just gone completely out the window. Now the latest Call of Duty Modern Warfare doesn't care. It doesn't even care if you're using a mouse and keyboard on console. It's gonna let that through. Because they realize more and more that if someone really wants to play a game with a controller, they likely don't really care if they're at an objective advantage or disadvantage.
I mean, as long as they're having fun and not complaining about it, as a dev, you're not really going to care, right?
Yes, exactly.
Gears of War, you can play console players as well. But those console players are not pushovers. Those are really good
I really
players.
like that about Gears of War, how the game's mechanics and camera angles like kind of create a parity between both controller and mouse and keyboard players. You can keep up with controller with mouse and keyboard players, and at least at the lower levels I was at in Gears.
No, you can.
Yeah, it goes back to that thing, right? Like, I think my only comparison, obviously I know jack shit really honestly about Halo or how it feels, but I can just feel the game in terms of its movement and also the shooting. SWAT is something where you need to be reactionary and be able to like be like Counter-Strike almost. You need to be able to shoot somebody in the head really quickly. So a keyboard and mouse is always going to feel like that's more precise to me. Whereas Slayer, I don't know, I'm open to being wrong about this, but precision aiming is not exactly what wins you in that kind of game. It's more about how you're able to move around players and also
predicting a grenade throw in the middle of your bursts.
Predicting a grenade throw, predicting where they're going to move, and bursting and getting the shield down and moving in.
And that's the dynamic that I think I've always loved Halo about Halo personally, is that it has that interesting mixture where it's a movement-based game. You can react to getting shot at. You can have a variety of abilities. And yet, unlike, say, previous arena shooters in the past, it's contrasted with a high aim assist on gamepads and relatively large hitboxes compared to stuff in the past. And you have the interesting parity as well of you have the general hitbox set up with the shields, that is basically shoot them anywhere, that then enters the second stage of when that's down, and then you have to be precise.
Which is an incredibly smart way to do it. I mean, you've got the opportunity to unload and kill somebody, and it makes it quite easy. You can shoot from quite far away across the map and know that, 50% of your hits will hit. But then as soon as that glow goes down, you're like, okay, aim for the head. I need to get in.
One thing I've always appreciated with all the Halo games, and the moment I learned this, it all really snapped with me, is that health is balanced in a way so that you can't really kill an enemy with just your one gun and its one bullets alone. You usually have to mix things up with your grenades or with a secondary weapon at some point in the process. It's
a risk-reward factor where because I mean, I run into players all the time who, when I'm shooting at them, will just start tossing grenades instinctively. They trying to get I'm like, I understand why, but it's not going to help you, buddy. You're already screwed by doing this. You don't understand. But it makes sense, though, because I've had situations where someone will get that first shot at me, but because I get a grenade at a right angle or I time a certain fall down on the map, I can really turn the tide of that battle compared to what we're so used to, which is just, you see an enemy and you're gone. It gives you time to react. It also creates this feeling of connection. Unlike the Call of Duty games, I always know what kills me in a Halo, because I have a good 3 seconds to watch the process happen. I have such a mixed feeling about Advanced Warfare in particular, because I don't know about you guys, but I actually really, really enjoyed the multiplayer of that game. Yeah, I remember having good times with that. On PC, though, and I realize looking back at that game, I'm like, I can understand why that movement got so derided in the community, because I could see that being an absolute nightmare on a gamepad, because unlike Halo, the movement is so fast and so rapid. It's not like where in Halo, if you want to travel multiple stories, you've got to plan your route. You've got to do this specific crouch jump to lead your way up these platforms. In Advanced Warfare, it's just a double button press and that's it. You're now 2 stories high. And on PC, that was a really interesting dynamic to deal with.
Is that what happened? Because that game got pretty solid reviews. I remember there being a lot of enthusiasm in the multiplayer community during the first few weeks after launch, but it kind of fizzled.
I think it might have been, I remember, because I followed a couple COD YouTubers around that time, or a little bit after, and all I remember was them essentially just poking fun at Advanced Warfare. And I know that enhanced movement in general very much got very derided in the Call of Duty community, because on gamepad it did often result in people just spamming jetpacks, knowing that most players couldn't respond fast enough with an analog stick. You know, like to them being that high. It was essentially, if you see an enemy above you, you can't look up high fast enough and you're done if someone sets up those encounters. But on PC, I didn't have that problem, which is probably why I didn't really realize it on Advanced Warfare. In particular, Uplink, I recall being so much fun in Advanced Warfare because of that movement system, which was the football mode. And basically playing football with guns and having the ability to not only double jump and all that type of stuff, but also dash sideways. And I could actually taunt enemies where I would be going to their goal essentially straight on, but then going up and then left and then right. It would be like, it was a really fun mixture to have in a game that is so traditionally just point and click.
Come to think of it, Halo Reach multiplayer has jetpacks, and you're probably not gonna be frustrated with being unable to aim at them.
Because it's much slower, and often a lot of jetpack players get punished for being out in the open because they've got no cover and they can't quickly escape.
I remember having markers to aim at ahead of time on the jetpack players.
I cannot choose anything other than sprint. It hurts me. I just can't not have sprint.
You and the rest of the community, man, like that was the reason why Halo 4 gave sprint to everybody and completely changed the face of the way that game's pacing was, is because 80% of the player base in Reach were using sprint by default.
I just can't not have it. It just feels so slow otherwise, which is fine. Like, it's okay, but I don't know. I'll try and put like armor on or something, and then I'll press control by accident. I'll be like, oh no, what am I doing? I just trying to sprint. So are you guys surprised? Because this game's not free. I mean, you can sign up for Xbox Game Pass and like we have to play
$1.
Which I
$1.
tried, but then the game didn't launch twice after their downloads are slower than Steam. So I just said fuck it and bought it on Steam.
That is pretty incredible.
Okay, I got a story for you.
Wait, Judge,
boy.
wait a second.
Yeah, sure, all right.
Are you guys surprised? It had 161,000 concurrent players today. Like,
no, I'm really not that surprised, because I don't consider myself in the Halo community, but I see it. Like, and I know a lot of people who are neck deep in it. And this has been a talking point for a really, really long time. A lot of people have just, because you have to remember too, Halo Reach in many ways is the black sheep of the family before Halo 5 became the black sheep of the family. Like, it's the game that was considered controversial in the Halo community amongst fans because it brought these armor abilities, because it changed its art style.
Loadouts scared the hell out
as well.
of people back in like 2010.
Yeah, it really did. And it's interesting to think that having so basically this is, of all the Bungie Halo games, this one is the least old school in its design, and yet even it can generate so much hype in the community just because it is the closest people have had to a PC Halo game that is from the original developers, and it's been treated properly. Like, it has uncapped frame rates. It has key rebinds, except for V and J for some fucking reason, which I don't know. I'll get into that later. But yeah, like, it has a port that you can just hop into regardless of whether you just want to play with a controller and play as old school like before, or if you want to play an enhanced PC experience.
Second highest paid release of the year on Steam, though. That is insane. That is pretty insane. Only
I'm really
third
curious.
overall, with Destiny 2 free to play being slightly higher, but that's not surprising. That's free to play. But second with 160 concurrent players on the first day is insane. To think like all these people's thirst for Halo is awesome.
Yeah, because I think the reason why is because if you really think about it, what other games have we had that are like Halo since Call of Duty took the reins as the mainstream shooter to beat? Like, we really haven't had pretty much none.
It's kind of strange because you were still talking about it being the sort of modern brother of all of the Halo games, which is true, and it has these different things.
Go on, George, say your piece.
What about Destiny?
Destiny to me is not like Halo in any way, even in the PvP sector. Like the PvP sector,
it definitely is not. There's
very
some
much
movement genesis, like the way you move in Destiny feels somewhat similar, but you're a lot more, unless you're playing the Titan class, you're a lot more like sleeker, and you still feel
Halo and Destiny and Doom, weirdly, play more like shmups from a first-person perspective because the projectiles move slow.
Yes, but most in the campaign sector. I think in campaign design, Destiny is, you're right, is closer than it is in Halo.
That was one of my big observations. Was I was playing Halo Reach last night, shooting some jackals with a 3-round burst with a little 2x scope rifle, and I was thinking to myself, "Oh my god, I was playing Destiny a few weeks ago, and it felt almost exactly like this."
But you have to
for
admit
some
as
reason,
well,
Reach was funner, but it just kind of
it's also more like it has a completely different structure as well. Like,
I feel like this
different.
just tragically shows how the minutiae might be different, but in the grand scheme of things, how far have these big industry giants really gone since 2010?
Oh yeah, no, in terms of the
gameplay
that Destiny has, the moment to moment that you're going in the campaign, it has that same basic framework.
And Destiny has the bounce, I feel. Like, I like Destiny's game feel because it has that bouncy,
the bounce and the high aim assist. That what's really funny to me about now that you mention this, it's also got me thinking too about how both of those games also translate really well to PC. Like, Destiny 2 feels great on PC despite being wholly designed for gamepads originally.
And Destiny's a movement-based shooter as well. It's about moving constantly around a map, like in big open areas for sure, and you have a bit more, mobility than you do compared to Halo, because the maps are tighter and stuff. But there's something about Halo Reach, playing it today after playing some games since it came out in 2010 or whatever, in the modern generation we're in now, there was something a lot more simple, like almost cleaner about Halo Reach. The simplicity.
Oh
not
yeah,
of
you
the
don't
maps
have
it's like
tiny text all over the screen too.
There wasn't an overabundance of information to the player all the time. It's funny because I played SWAT, so there was, for a long time, there was no radar. There was none of that. There was only the ticker feed of who's died, whatever. And then as soon as I played Slayer, I noticed that there was a bit more information, but there still wasn't, like an overload of information towards the player. And because all the textures are flat, they're not popping like you would in a modern game that would have like grit and dirt and surface texture everywhere and all that kind of stuff. There's almost something angular and weirdly like Lego about map design in Halo that's why you remember it so well, because you can remember the corners almost, the way the buildings fold over each other. There's no like overhanging grass textures or vines on a wall or broken
just be
pieces.
A smear.
Yeah,
Halo has two very different things going for in its map design, and that is one. It's a lot of times it's art direction. The art direction is very strong, and even the multiplayer maps to give those very, very strong sense of places and media callouts and stuff like that. And then also it uses a lot of asymmetric multiplayer design as well, that games in pursuit of being esports competitive have really drifted away from over the years and becoming less and less interested in. the Call of Duty series in particular. Like, Modern Warfare has gotten a lot of heat for trying to move away from that, but I think Bricky actually made a really good point on that game where, to summarize, he was basically saying that the problem isn't 3-lane maps, the problem is 3 funnel maps, which is what Call of Duty moved into, where it's not like, oh, there's 3 lanes you can rotate. It's here's 3 pathways you're locked into, and you have to decide ahead of time.
Yeah, I remember the maps I was playing in Halo Reach being more like circles with spokes. So like spokes on a wheel sort of design. It does feel like a bridge between old Halo and new Halo, between 343 and Bungie stuff. It has that bounciness to it. And maps where a wall in a forest will just be a smear of a rock texture on a wall instead of something more cosmetically realistic. But it also has a focus on scoped burst rifles with a little more projectile than what I'm used to. I was also happy to see big battle scenes in the campaign, like a lot of situations that looked like I was playing a Call of Duty campaign, where I was getting the vibe. I don't know if this is how the actual level design works, but I was getting the vibe that endless enemies would be spawning in unless I destroyed an anti-air gun or something. But the level I was going through was a very silent cartographer, optional vehicle progression through a beachhead that felt like classic Halo. It's 2000. It feels very 2010. Like,
yeah, it's just
the line
other
where
thing that
things...
occurred to me is like, because you mentioned Doom and Destiny in the case of what other games have like kind of scratched that Halo itch, and
the
thing
shmup feel.
Yeah, that shmup feel. And what I think is interesting is that, one, I would argue that at least in multiplayer design, that hasn't carried over nearly as much. Like, campaign's probably the closest it has, and 2, both those games are massive successes. Like, Destiny less so critically, like it kind of got an okay reception, but it's got a huge fan base now after slowly reworking the game steadily over time. And Doom was a real shock. Like, I still remember how much I was doubting that game upon release, especially that E3 demo. With the dubstep and the great colors and the slow pacing and the long animations. It was really, I was like, oh my God, this does not look appealing at all.
What do you think about the slow rollout of all of the games to PC though?
In this case, I think that shouldn't have been the case. Although I can totally understand why. I think this is a Microsoft move. Absolutely. Like, I think Microsoft are saying, like, hey, you guys have got reach. It's basically done. Put that out. It'll generate the hype cycle. And then from there, we can generate a marketing campaign or some excitement around each progressive title, rather than just having one game come out with everything like that, and then the story dies down, and then only the hardcore people in the community are going to keep that conversation going.
It's easy to imagine us having this sort of occasion on the podcast whenever they'll drop another one, because I feel like I was this excited about Halo 3 a year and a half ago when I was playing El Dorito.
Yeah,
like, it got me talking and thinking about Halo. I was engaging with the brand. The advertising worked.
I don't think we're going to get because I think the last one they're going to release is Halo 4, and I think that one's going to be a lot quieter. But aside from that, yeah, I think each of those games is going to generate at least somewhat of a hype cycle, because if these releases keep being okay. Like, if Halo 1 PC, say, releases and it's a really bad port, that's going to install a lot of doubt. And
this
releases.
Is the graphical upgrade. So if you want to get real hardcore, you can compare Total Conversion Combat Evolved Mega Mod for the original PC version with the Anniversary Edition.
And yeah, we haven't had the Anniversary Editions before. And also, like, the thing that also really shocked me was booting up the game and it having 2 EXEs, one for the base game with just everything intact, and then one for mods.
Oh, this reminds me. I was going to say, when hearing about your technical issues, that I had those too until... Oh, it's the stupidest freaking thing, and I hate to even say it, but the game would not launch for me outside of the Xbox Game Launcher. But if I went to the icon inside of my file folders and clicked it there, then it would launch.
Same thing's happening for me. I can't boot the game at all from the Xbox game app.
Xbox is busted.
It just doesn't work. And then, but if you click the icon, and it's like, which version do you want to play? The anti-cheat one or the other one?
It's funny to me too, because like, it's the one game on the Xbox launcher, whatever you want to call it, to me, that didn't work. Gears 5 ran totally fine.
Outer
Sea of Thieves
Worlds
ran totally
worked
fine.
totally fine
Yeah,
for
everything
me.
worked totally fine. And then the one game that like I'm gonna really like know I'm gonna sink some hours into, it doesn't work, and I end up just buying this. The download thing still baffled me. Like I was staring at the downloads, going, "Holy fuck! It's jumping between 20 megabytes a second and like 500 kbs. What's going on here?" And then I get it on Steam, downloads in 3 minutes. I'm going, "How are Valve's server faster than Microsoft's own?" Like direct connection.
We were playing a couple of guys in the office at the end of work today. We played for a couple of hours basically, and one of the guys who was playing is a Japanese staff member, and he obviously had the Japanese version of it through Steam.
Yeah.
And we couldn't start a multiplayer game, like a multiplayer lobby with him in it. And the game just kept saying, this player is missing files or whatever. Like, you're playing with a player who's missing content, blah, blah. And we were like, what the fuck? And then we went through, like, multiple different things. Like, he'd only bought Halo Reach instead of the Master Chief Collection to start. And we were like, oh, so maybe that's the problem.
It's always something, huh?
And he was like, shit. So instead of, like, $15, he spent, like, $40 to get the Master Chief Collection. And then he installed that, and then we tried it, and then the same error came up, and we were like, what? And I'm like, what the hell? Like, all the English language ones would work, and it's fine. And I was like, So we went to the DLC like tab in Steam to check if there was any outstanding DLC that he was missing that maybe, you know, the Xbox Game Pass version just installed. And there was a file called Halo Reach Extended Language App.
Oh, so the language packs,
which was like a 3 gigabyte patch that allows crossplay between languages.
So it wasn't the Steam.
Yeah, well, it was only the Steam version that didn't install it automatically. Because I was like, why is my game like 20 gig and yours is not? But once you install that, it works completely. So
you know, there's like another theory I have for El Dorito, you know, being like this sort of catalyst for Halo PC, is that playing the game, it's a really good port. I don't mean to say like, oh, this game is like awful to play or anything like that, but there's a lot of signs that 343 are not native PC developers. Because there's just like a lot of really baffling things that are in, not the gameplay, but in its matchmaking, its control setup. Like for one, you can't rebind your push to talk or your text chat. They're hard binded to J and V. For some reason, those keys cannot be retouched. Everything else can. Those are totally fine. But those are on lockdown. And another thing I remember too, in the game, it will kick you from matchmaking if you're being idle for too long.
Yes, and you can't start a lobby with an idle player.
What's bad about that?
No, well, because we're sitting there go like, guys, game, because like we're in matchmaking, we're looking for a game, and yet by doing that, the game thinks we're not playing because we're not moving, because like we're alt tabbing or we're checking Reddit tabs or we're just like going
exactly,
and getting
right? Yeah.
How long? Like, what's the threshold?
It's
what
like
do they consider idle?
It's like 2-3 minutes.
Hey, because there's the progression system. You don't want players idling while their levels go up. I don't know how much it matters in Halo Reach, and I'm not familiar with Halo games having progression systems, but I definitely saw meters tick up to tell me what a cool dude I was.
Yeah, but when you're waiting for a game to start and you just want to
we're waiting for a match, like, and then we get kicked out because we're waiting for the match and not doing anything. So we have to move our mouse like every once in a while during matchmaking just to stop it from kicking us. And it doesn't work either because I still run into AFK players in game, so it doesn't stop them getting in there somehow.
It makes more sense to me that it would be bad if it still counts the menu time as well.
Yeah, no, and that's what I don't understand. It's a very, very questionable. Like, these are things that to me, one, they're easily patchable, and two, they're easy things to work around. It's just, again, it makes you question, like, how does things like this even really get through to this system? And it's something I don't think we'll probably ever get any sort of details on.
I mean, I will admit, for all the foibles so far, I'm not thoroughly impressed, but I'm rather impressed considering my last kind of a Halo experience was the original launch for the Master Chief Collection, which was a flaming garbage truck of issues that... How long did it take for that to get solved? Like 9 months? Like
it wasn't even... And it wasn't even entirely fixed. I was there at ground zero, so it took about
Yeah.
it took about 4 months for matchmaking to be at least somewhat like it took 4 months for the game
Jesus
essentially to
Christ.
stop putting you in lobbies where instead of 4v4 it's 1v1v1v1v2 in Team Slayer matches. That took like 4 months to solve, and then about a couple more months to get playlists actually decently sorted out. They reset the rankings like multiple occasions, so there was no skill equalizer or anything like that. It was just a complete dice roll of who you got in terms of how good they are at the game. Yeah, it was a complete mess. And the new map for Halo 2 Anniversary and packing ODST was a good measure. Like, it was a good thing that they did that to get people, especially that those were completely free. Like, no payments or anything. It was just for
I didn't
everybody.
even know about that. I just
Yeah.
remember trying to play it and never being able to get it to work. And
Yeah, and that's
very
the
quickly dropping
thing
it.
is that's what people are going to remember, which is honestly why I'm even more surprised that they actually stuck with the Halo Master Chief Collection name when
Yes.
they ported it to PC. Like, I was
'Cause it
surprised they
was
didn't
quite
call it like
tainted.
Halo the Complete Edition or something like that, because it does, because yeah, and the only thing I can imagine is that Microsoft really believes that they can turn it around. And to be fair, there have been cases for games recently, Destiny in many ways being one of them, Siege being the go-to example of games that really turn around their reputation in a relatively short time span.
I mean, Master Chief Collection's been out, what now? 6 years? That's a long
Yeah.
time.
That's a long time. So one, they know that a lot of people they can forget, and because we're at near the end of that console generation now.
Remember Reach.
Remember Reach and the way that it wasn't packed in with the rest of the games that were all busted on day of release.
I think I played more games of Halo that worked in today, my only day of playing Halo Reach,
Yeah.
than I did in my entire time playing the Master Chief Collection on Xbox One.
And they know that the low bar set from their last time made it so that even if Reach has problems today, they know it's going to be still received better because at least people can actually play it and get into matches and
to
enjoy
be fair,
it.
having 161,000 concurrent players and having no real server issues, that's pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not as smooth a release as the original games, but in some ways I think that's just because Bungie were somehow all their games launched smoothly, and I don't really know how.
Matt, did you get a chance to play it, or are you gonna play it?
I did not. The download was way too slow.
Why am
Hmm.
I so lucky?
It kept jumping around.
That's what it did for me.
It
We're
kept
using the
jumping
Xbox
around.
launcher.
Yeah.
That's what it did for me. It was the download took about, I mean, I got really fast and it still took me like 30-40 minutes because it kept jumping all over the place.
I did not have any problems, but I also didn't put it under microscope. I kind of set it to download and then came back 3 hours later and it was done.
Meanwhile, I was like, hey, it's at 10 a.m. This is exactly the minute when the game launches. Why am I not playing Reach right now? Xbox, come on.
Well, with that being said, we've been talking about Halo a lot for almost 40 minutes.
It happens.
I shouldn't be surprised at this point when we do pick a game we all play and manage to go down that hole, but like where have you been, Matt?
Not Halo.
So where have you been?
Well, I played multiple games, but the thing is, it's like, hey, we haven't talked about like games in 3 weeks, I would say. When Low Spec Gamer came out, we didn't. Well, I don't remember what we
That
talked
was
about.
2
We
weeks
didn't
ago because we had the Thanksgiving
You
break.
talked about Jedi, and I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about Jedi because I actually
Yeah,
finished
And
it.
well,
Pokemon.
okay,
We never talked
what did-
Pokemon.
Oh! I want to talk about Pokemon.
Fuck Pokemon. Pokemon has always sucked. I don't understand why so many people are suddenly realizing it upon that latest game that came out. It's always been bad. I've always hated it since school. Ever since the trading card game infested my entire fucking school. It was so annoying.
Whoa!
Go
We
ahead,
got a
Liam.
Yu-Gi-Oh fan in
What?
here, sounds like.
It's like some sort of nerd fight is gonna break out in a second.
Oh,
Jesus.
God, no, no, Pokemon is so boring. Thank you, people realizing that it's meh. It's always been.
Wait, who's
Whoa.
realized? It's like 8 out of 10. It's whatever.
So I have not been around. You guys already talked about Jedi. Probably for the best because I finished it and definitely did not enjoy it as much as it seemed.
What is why?
Now that Halo's out of the way, we're all just gonna fight.
Yeah, the entire podcast has just done a 180.
We got like there are very few games out there that just everyone will agree on, and it's good to know Halo is one of them.
Yeah, I'm sure that
Yeah.
gives Microsoft and 343 some sense of security. But yeah,
Like-
Pokemon's not one of them. Jedi Fallen Order apparently isn't one of them. Despite I've been mostly hearing nothing but really good things.
So
Like, I understand, like, the game is kind of broken at times.
it's
It
not
is,
broken
but there's some
at
good moments in
times.
it.
It's broken all the time. And I work in game dev, and I know how hard it is, but man.
I played on PS4, so I really got a lot of those bugs. I fell through the elevator. Yeah.
That game needed 6 more months. Like, it needed time. It's on the verge of being a really good game. Like, it could have been a good game.
Yeah.
It unfortunately there were
was a
two
good
things
game.
that just went against it that I don't think it can recover from. One is it is the buggiest AAA release since Assassin's Creed Unity. It is
Whoa.
awful. It
Wait,
is awful at times.
Wait, what?
It's so buggy.
Death Stranding, you can't even walk up a mountain without glitching, and you're talking about
No, we're
Star
not
Wars?
talking about like physical movement. We're talking about like game breaking bugs. It's different. Like spinning the camera
what was
around in
game-breaking about
Jedi,
Star
making
Wars?
half of the world's occlusion drop out, or like falling through the map, and just ridiculous bugs like that.
Well, I guess I never had game breaking.
You played on PC though, right?
No.
Oh, I played on PS4 as well.
It's just the worst.
For me, it's just so buggy. And I patched it, and it did
Yeah,
get like 2 patches in. It did start to get a bit better, but lighting would just drop out all the time. It's so inconsistent. Frame rate in some areas was just like, oh my god.
It's interesting to hear
had
this
frame rate.
because I remember,
Yeah.
like, this is sounding like my experience with Tomb Raider Underworld, where it seemed a lot of people in that community seem to like that game. I play it and I'm running into bugs every 5 minutes, and I'm like, is this like, am I the only one? And I'm like, I guess I am, because every other gameplay footage I see, it's fine. There's no issues happening on screen.
There was
Right.
just so many inconsistent issues, and it really actively made me not want to play it. And I finished it, which everybody knows on this podcast for me is weird because I very rarely finish games. But I managed
This game is so annoying, and I hate playing it. I don't want to keep going. Oh, it's done.
There was something about it that made me want to keep playing. I don't know whether it was the Star Wars thing about it, but the other thing that went against it for me that it just unfortunately couldn't do it was that it came out the same year as Sekiro and tried to emulate the combat of Sekiro, but was so poorly executed in comparison, where hitboxes and collision are off all the time. The parry timing in this game is absolutely dog shit and doesn't work.
That I agree
It's
with.
not good, and you can't have something like this finely crafted masterpiece. This is not about difficulty. It's about like just the general combat working on any of the difficulties. It's nice in Jedi that you can change the difficulty to what you want it to be, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work half the time. You fight against like the Purge Knights or whatever they're called, like the Purge Troopers, who just like mash combos at you, and you try and parry them like you would in Sekiro or something like that, and it does not work.
Well, it's interesting to hear all this because like I have at least 2 friends that are people that wanted to get into the Souls games and couldn't because they got too irritated with the checkpoint spans between boss fights typically, and they really hated wasting their time doing
like
repeated battles they didn't
honest
like.
to God, like
and
Jedi
and
could
they-
be
and-
the bridging gap for that.
And it might be because now they both finished the game, really loved it, and now are curious to try other From Software games or other games that are similar in that style.
And that does not surprise me at all. There is definitely a thing, but I feel like for them, it's going to be a great experience because they're going to go to something that arguably is going to be a lot more challenging. But especially in Sekiro's case, the combat, like if you watch just slowed down gifs of that game, the collision detection and the hitboxes in that game are so finely tuned and so perfectly crafted that it's like a work of art. Whereas you see some of the Jedi clips floating around on Twitter where like a lightsaber swing will go 6 feet away from Cal and he'll get hit by it. there's just a lot of jank on top of not only the bugs but the combat as well.
Which, to be fair, though, like probably the reason why Sekiro is like that at this point is because From Software did not at all start off that way, even with the games that really took off. I recall really hating my time with Dark Souls 1 and 2 because of hitboxes and because of glitchy movement and because of terrible collision detection and enemies stabbing me through walls. And I'm like, fuck this game. And it wasn't until Dark Souls 3 that I really fell in love with the series, because I'm like, finally, there's a smoothness to this. There's a flow to this game that I can really appreciate.
And there's no doubt about that, but it doesn't detract from the fact that in the same year we have one game and then another game that it just straight up not rips the combat, because the force powers in this game can be quite cool. I don't agree with the force stamina bar. You get like one force move out of it and then you have to wait for it to recharge. Like, they're fun.
It's funny you make those I really want to hear what you have to say about Pokemon now, because that doesn't make any fucking sense. All right, let's talk about
it. Doesn't make any sense that I was really irritated since 5 years old that every single fucking kid in my school, they go, "Hey dude, you got some of those Pokemon trading cards?" I'm like, no, I fucking don't have those trading cards because they're worthless. They're useless bags of shit.
Dude, I hate to say it, but like, if you're tired of hearing about Pokemon, you're gonna like have to live on an island.
That's why do you think I've been driven to only being a reclusive person that just sits in my house and makes YouTube videos? It's because of Pokemon and me trying to shut myself off from the world. Oh God.
So yeah, okay, all right, okay. So I'm definitely probably the only person who's played Pokemon here. I feel like there's just this weird space we live in. We're talking about Halo Reach in a really positive way. It's a game that has come out almost 10 years ago, and the PC release that just came out has no improvements
That's how you know
upon
I
it,
like
right?
it.
But we live in this weird time now where through October, November, and now December, we had a AAA Star Wars game that copied a very originally niche Japanese combat game. We had a big AAA Nintendo Pokemon game that got massively criticized for cutting content, and then we had Hideo Kojima's new game that was about delivering pizzas across Iceland. And we live in a weird space where everything's kind of strange, because the one thing that Jedi and Pokemon taught me, and now Halo Reach, was about just how unfun Death Stranding is. It is a repetitive mission structure that I didn't really snap out of until I played other games that were more fun. And Jedi was fun, but then I played it, and obviously we've talked about it now, all the bugs and stuff. But then Pokemon,
I can almost smell the wave of weed that came from your apartment when you had this aha moment of connecting this Triforce together. That ended up in the realization that, oh wait, Death Stranding sucks.
It's not that it sucks. It doesn't suck. It really doesn't. Sometimes it really is unlike anything else. But there are times where you're doing the same thing for like 50 hours. It's just madness.
It does what it wants. It has a focus on a niche, weird verb that isn't for everybody, but it has very clever ideas about how to make the most of that verb.
If somebody made a game about being an Uber delivery guy, nobody would play it.
Mm-hmm.
Death Stranding shows that it is possible.
Yeah, you can make an Uber game in disguise.
If you wrap it up in famous movie stars and have really nice tech, then you can do it. And the one thing I'll give Death Stranding credit for,
and make a fun control scheme and mechanics.
One thing I'll give Death Stranding credit for, very good credit, is that is a technologically very sound game. Which brings me on to Pokemon and Jedi, which are two games made by massive studios that are both technologically pretty terrible. We've already talked about Jedi. So Pokemon as well, I've kind of stopped playing it because of kind of what Raycevick was saying, where in the beginning of this game, it's really promising. It does feel like it's going to evolve beyond a certain point. Forgetting about all the garbage about Pokemon being cut out, because one of the strong things about this addition of Pokemon that I think a lot of people would agree with is that the actual new generation of Pokemon are actually really well thought out and kind of interesting. A lot of them are based off like insects in the UK, and they have really strange designs or really kind of obscure, weird evolutions that are kind of different for Pokemon. They look really interesting, but you know, it's Pokemon, right? And then it actually doesn't go beyond that, and it fools you into thinking it might because it has front loaded all of this stuff about this huge new wild area where you can catch Pokemon in this open world space, and it's all based on weather and time and all this kind of stuff. And the first time you play it, if you're interested in Pokemon and have kind of always dreamed of that Pokemon MMO in your head, it kind of is like 50% of the way towards that. And there's a lot of Pokemon there, and some of them are really high level, and you're going to get fucking crushed. And then there are other ones you can catch, and you can see them, and it's really fun. But then you see through the cracks like you would.
I think there's an interesting balance in a lot of games that there seems to be this almost, I feel like you could almost make a formula for controversy in a game that makes people realize potential in a brand that isn't realized.
Yes, and this game is one good example of that.
Yeah, like I feel like that's exactly what Ubisoft were doing a long time. Mainly Watch Dogs is the one that comes to my head, where it's this game that hints at so many things that it doesn't do.
I think it's a bit different in that case.
No, it's different in that case, but yeah, like there's just seems to be like a plenty of cases of mainly this generation, I think in particular, where just a lot of games that hint at things that people that I don't think would be criticized if they didn't.
Yeah.
I think planning Destiny and Watch Dogs as a trilogy means that there was a kind of ambition cap on the first.
There was always gonna be that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
there was. Yeah, and there's always a cap. There's only so much a game can do, especially when it's being founded upon. But that's
and the problem with like AAA games, and it's why I don't want to criticize Jedi too much, is it's a miracle they even get made in the first place for the most part. And to have like a cohesive focus about something, especially in a AAA game, is really, really difficult because it has to go through like 1,000 different people who all want to put their creative touch on something, and to keep that, you know, not only like the narrative focus, but the gameplay focus and how it's structured together is always going to be super tough in that regard. And you know, when you have absolute monolithic studios like Ubisoft making Watch Dogs, it's never gonna be that. But it's weird to think with Pokemon where nobody expects it to go beyond where it's at. We've got to this point now where we've seen small, like minuscule evolutions of Pokemon. The problem with Sword and Shield, for the most part, is that it front loads you with thinking that actually they've not advertised all of this. Like it throws you into this thing where you're like, oh my god, this, like, they didn't really talk about this. This is huge. Look at this massive space. Look at all this Pokemon going on. Like all of this stuff. Wow, this is crazy. I didn't know about
Why
this.
haven't we been going down this path? It was amusing to me. This is gonna sound completely different, but it's a case of realization. I don't have the latest Call of Duty game. It's Activision, so I know that in 6 months they are gonna probably mess it up because that's what they've done every single time in the past. But when I played the beta for that latest game and seeing all the new animations that they did and how much different gunplay feels and how much more polished everything is, I'm like, it kind of like made everyone realize, oh my god, like what if they did this kind of jump in core gameplay like with Modern Warfare 2 instead of just the slight step that it's been taking for years, like over a decade at this point. Like what if they did this jump so much earlier? And it really makes you realize, yeah, like that. I think the last generation, we've been lulled into thinking that, oh, these games are just going to go in this direction and they're not going to involve, there's no more room, because that's what it makes it seem like. And then a bunch of recent titles are going, no, there's still so many more things that we could keep doing. We just weren't, because of cost, because of marketing, because of what, whatever. Of
some of them
reasons.
are successful, some of them are not.
Yeah. Like, I've been pushing for so many years to just go with the old model, which was make a bunch of mid-market titles, and then the ones that really take off, make AAA sequels to those. Because that's what we used to be. That's what all these franchises were founded upon. Call of Duty used to not be AAA.
Well, that's why I kind of think of it as this weird space we're in, because it's great. We don't get annual sequels anymore like we did through the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 generation, where it was every November or December there was a new Call of Duty, there was a new Assassin's Creed. There was a new blah, blah, blah. And we now live in this space where we have these big franchises which are taking risks for the most part, or trying to evolve in a certain way. Pokemon, obviously, this jump to the Switch. If you try and play Pokemon Let's Go from last year compared to this game, they're completely different. But ultimately, it does stumble beyond the name. It can't go past what Pokemon is as an identity. And it is moving from town to town, fighting a gym leader, then catching Pokemon. And after the first 6 hours, that's what it falls into. And it doesn't go beyond that. And that's when it becomes depressing, because you're like, yeah, no,
Trash.
fuck, you were so
Trash.
close.
Trash.
Yeah. And
Guess what, Liam? I bought it.
there you go.
And I shouldn't have. You remember I told you I was gonna wait?
Yeah, but
I was gonna wait,
that's exactly right. And I feel the same way, because it lures you into this false sense. And there are a couple of things I've enjoyed about it. One, I think, while technically it has some issues, it's not the prettiest game, but the art direction is really cool. It has like this, for me, especially as an English person, it is like seeped in like English countryside culture. And obviously James Turner, who was the art director for this game, is British. So a lot of that shines through, and it's really sweet and charming and unique, and it has a fantastic art direction. The only other thing that has been interesting is they have these things called max raid battles, which you can play, thankfully, locally with 3 other people, where you team up together to take down like what is called like a Dynamax Pokemon, which is like a fucking huge, giant, powerful Pokemon that has fucking massive HP bar. It's basically like a raid boss in an MMO. And you have to work together, and actually, depending on the level it is, they're like ranked by stars. So they have like 1 to 5, 5 being super powerful. Like, you really have to think about how you interact with the people you're doing it with to take down Pokemon. Like, you know, status effects, paralysis, putting them to sleep. There's so many different things you have to think about if you're really doing like a difficult battle. Some of them are pretty easy because it's.
That's the thing. I was just gonna say I'm surprised because like I heard complete opposite viewpoints from like other critics.
Well, if you play it online, it's unbearable. It's actually unbearable. It never works. You can never get in, and when you play with other people, they either drop out or it fills it with AI partners who don't know what they're doing, and it becomes just like a super missed opportunity. If you manage actually to, thankfully, like, work in a space where there are people who have numerous abundance of Switches and you can try it out together, which is still pretty niche, it's actually pretty good fun. And you're, like, talking together to, like, try and overcome and catch this, you know, really high-level, powerful Pokemon. And it feels rewarding, but that's, like, the extent of the fun I've had.
All this discussion about the multiple franchises and evolving is just making me more and more realize, is there a way to fuck up Tetris like in gameplay design? Because it seems to me like between the VR release recently and now 99 that you could just put Tetris in any form and it will seem to get by.
Wasn't that?
I'm okay with this. Death Stranding.
Wasn't the original Sega version of
Tetris of Duty
carrying the blocks? So Matt, tell me.
You didn't really get to the nitty gritty. Like the game is just soulless almost. I'm gonna have to be hard on it because it's $60.
It is expensive.
When everything else is $60. You can get Dragon Quest, all these other games that have open worlds.
Hold on. It's a full price game.
It's a full price game. It's a full fucking price game. And it's like you go into the open world and there's a draw distance and Pokemon are just popping in and like everything stops when you walk up a ladder and like Gyarados is just like swinging his head around while you're like it's the animations are garbage. It's so weird. It's so weird that this came out and people are paying money for it and people are okay with it. It's not like this thing where people are just being mad that they didn't add Pokemon in it, because that's not the problem with it. Because it would have been better if they cut a more Pokemon and they had better animations, like water or whatever attack doesn't come out of their like body instead of whatever stuff that they whatever Blastoise they shoot. It's supposed to shoot from the fucking pumps, not his forehead. Or like it's weird. The double kick, like the Pokemon literally just jumps. It literally just jumps. Like this weird shit all throughout the game. A quick attack is probably like the most creative thing that they did, which is the character disappears.
Yeah, that actually does look pretty cool sometimes.
Yeah, it's just weird. This is like it's like they are doing the same animation that they did for 2D for 3D, and it just doesn't translate well. And what I told you, like what the last time we talked about, is like I want my GameCube Pokemon, right? Like back in the day, what was it called? Stadium? There was like 3 of them.
Yeah, there's Pokemon Stadium on the N64. Every single one of my friends had that if they had an N64.
Yes. And then you play this game. Finally, we get one, right? No, it's nothing like that. It's not you compare it to any other game that you can buy for $60 that maybe have an open world or whatever. They spent way more time on it. And I understand that they have a small team or whatever you want to tell me about it, but they still put out a shit product. It's really bad.
The other thing too is I think this is of all times to do this, like, release like a sort of modern Pokemon that isn't just like, a handheld made in classic style, at least ostensibly, is that we're in an era of a lot of reboots and actually a lot of quality ones. Like,
I was just about to ask how it compares to Go, or Let's Go rather. That was the last time I played Pokemon, and it seemed fine, technologically executed with regards to polish, but I found it boring. And
yeah, because it is by the numbers. Like, for as much as I agree with Matt about a lot of this, especially when it comes to battle animations, because it's almost unforgivable now, like, to not.
Yeah.
If you are gonna cut down to a certain point, and like going back to the whole Game Freak thing and all the horrible stuff that went around that, like if you are gonna do certain things that lower the workload, like making games is fucking hard. Like if you're gonna lower the workload, though, you have to produce the output of justifying that decision. And while the art direction of the game itself, I think, is really good. Like, if you compare the really boring, generic towns of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, because they're a remake of Yellow, that all the towns look the same. They're all the same assets. It's a Pokemon game. Whereas very distinctly in Sword and Shield, every city has its own identity. It looks completely different. Some of them, like the like fairy forest, like the illuminated forest, are really cool and really nice. They don't run very well, and there's a lot of visual issues, but at least there is like the expansion that Game Freak are thinking beyond what other Pokemon games were, where it was just generic cities with the same Pokemon and Pokemon Center and all this thing. There is a good sense of art direction, but with that has come the cost of, oh fuck, we didn't plan for this technologically wise.
But, like, the story.
What story?
Don't you remember back, because I played a lot of Pokemon when I was growing up. A lot. And it wasn't just going to each city and between that city fighting a shit ton of trainers and then going to the gym. Like, that's literally what it is in the middle of the game. That's all you do. I would say until the end, really. There's no Savari Zone. There's no Unknown Ruins. There's no power plants. There's no bug catching contest. There's none of that. None of that. It's just you're just going from one point to the other, fighting the gym leader, and doing some, like, I don't know, weird puzzle that they have in the gym, and that's it.
Yeah, it
Like,
is not
it's
good in that regard. Like, you just turn up
you
at
wear
the city.
the same corny ass uniform. Your character looks like garbage unless you change the outfit. Like, my character has no ass. Why does my guy have no ass? Like, the uniform makes him look flat, man. It's just like, come on, some
No
squats,
junk in that trunk.
Priorities.
something. Yeah, like, why can I change my uniform? Why do I have to wear a stupid uniform when I'm riding my bike? Like, it's just little stuff like that. It's like, if I could customize my character, why? Oh my god.
This is so weird to
Oh my
listen
God.
to as someone who does not know what
It's
you're
so
talking
interesting
about.
that for me
Yeah.
as somebody that it's twofold interesting. One, it's interesting in someone that does not give one iota of a fuck about Pokemon, and two, it's interesting as somebody
You're not
that
missing
is.
anything.
I'm typically like, I'm so used to hearing people like us like go into like really like expressive deep dives where, oh, this gameplay issue is happening here because this animation is 0.5 seconds too long here, which leads to this issue here, blah blah blah. And it's so interesting to hear my character's ass isn't big enough. What the fuck? Why do I have to ride this stupid thing when riding a bike? If they just fix these things,
These
the
are the
game would be
important
better.
things.
Like, does your character wear some dumb bike shorts or something?
Yes.
Because, like, I played Red and Blue as a kid. I played a little bit of the GBA ones as a kid. I do remember there being more of a story in the GBA ones, but the Red and Blue, the narrative in Red and Blue basically is you want to be the best and catch them all, and that's all.
Your kid has some weird fixation on collecting all these things, and you in the real world echo that sentiment.
There is that, but like Black and White, for example, which probably is the most story heavy out of them all. I remember,
Oh yeah, see, I have no. That's years.
but that
past
was
my
about
time.
like environmentalism and like whether making Pokemon fight each other was cruel, and it asked questions of the player, like obviously in a Pokemon way. But it did,
Yeah.
it did
Oh,
do
God.
that. It did do that and expanded upon it. And I remember some of the missions you had to do. You'd arrive in a town and it would take you like 3 hours of doing stuff before you could go to the gym. Whereas
Do you feel like
in Sword and Shield, you just arrive in a town and then they're like, "Yep, it's over there. Go on, off you go."
None of
And then
these
you're in the
Pokemon
gym.
none of
They
these
don't
Pokemon would be dying if you just stopped.
So they got rid of the like guilt trip scripted events where you use Pokemon White Phosphorus on the Pokebattle.
Oh man,
It makes you
Yeah,
rock
you,
it
you
ass
don't get
one.
the computer simulation telling you that, hey, you're actually not real. You were actually a child soldier the whole time. You're not just capturing Pokemon. You're in a simulation.
Yeah, dude, I've played mods better than this.
Yeah, on the podcast you were talking about Pokemon Sticky. Pokemon
Everyone at my
Slimy, what
workplace
it?
was playing that online Pokemon game on PC. That was basically like a
Yeah.
complete ripoff, but like it was the only online Pokemon you could play, so everyone at work was just doing that.
Yeah.
Pokemon Sparkles, Pokemon Speckles,
Uh,
Pokemon Freckles.
I've played 2 of them. It's like the most popular ones. I think it was like Glazed and some other
Oh
one.
God, that's bad.
Halo
Ugh.
glazed.
Halo
Well,
Glazed. Oh, yeah.
Speaking of suddenly shifting things to a real awkward place, before we go to the break, before we go to our weekly
To get glazed?
our weekly bathroom break, let's talk about the Sausage Fest.
Yes, this.
Oh, why is it called the Sausage
Yeah,
Fest?
I was thinking the same thing, Matt. I was thinking the same thing. Why did George call it this?
You just put that in Discord, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you? What?
Because next week we are inviting our listeners to come see how the sausage is made in our factory.
Wow.
The kilt is coming off for the first ever live Dad and Son Sausage Festival on twitch.tv/SuperBunnyHop at 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 Eastern. On next Wednesday, December 11th, we will be attempting to live stream an
We will
episode.
be-
What could go wrong?
Nothing. It will
Like
be
everything.
flawless.
Emphasis on the attempting.
Yeah, I'm gonna for the next week, I'm gonna try my darndest to make graphical overlays and conduct some tests and set up call lines where listeners can call in. But we all know something's gonna.
It's
go
our
wrong.
100th episode bonanza, and it's inevitably gonna fail miserably. But you're all invited to watch it happen live.
It's why we stick around. It's why we do it. Well, why you guys do it. I don't need to stick around for any of this.
You got Halo to play.
Yeah, I've got better things to do.
If you have better things to do, now's the time, because this is the break.
The Pokemon time is 3 p.m.
Calling all Pokemon trainers.
Pikachu, Pokemon number 25, type Electric, Squirtle, Charmander.
Team Rocket.
We're here to get your Pokemon.
Pikachu, I choose you. It's becoming Raichu.
I don't want to end up as cat food.
Pokemon catching makes you hungry.
Animated Sea-Watches and Pops, each sold separately from Trendmasters.
Pikachu.
Hello, and welcome back.
Okay,
Is it
so
sad that this is more professional than what I'm used to?
for context, we just had a very, very long break talking about video games throughout the break, and now it just seems kind of underwhelming, right?
To talk about news.
News
Yeah.
about video games.
Liam.
Well, there's some stuff like Liam. I bet you're excited about RE3 remakes. Leaked
yeah.
box art, PSN store. Jill looks sweaty and wet.
Why does Nemesis, I get it, it's a new model, but why is most of his face covered in skin now? What happened to his eyes? I know his face is fucked up anyway.
His eyes have always been tiny little beads. I don't know.
But you could see both of them.
Nemesis looks fine to me. It's Jill that is a little. I have to squint and be like, wait, who's that again?
What's his name? What's the guy's name?
He looks like he's from a
Google
prog band.
Yakuza 7. Google Yakuza 7. He and the protagonist from Yakuza 7 look exactly the same to me.
I feel you. Thing is, whoever that guy is has just faded with memory. Jill, on the other hand, RE3 Tube Top Jill is an iconic representative image of conventionally attractive female characters in video games. Back in the late 90s, turn of the millennium, everyone on the gaming forums, I don't know, a third of them, had Tube Top Jill avatars and signatures. So I'm surprised to see that for the earlier remakes, they did cut it closer to the original designs. But Jill...
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a tube top? It looks like a tank top. I can't tell.
It's blue.
Yeah.
It looks fine.
Still blue.
Brad's his name. That's his name.
The guy in the very first FMV who
Brad Vickers. It's Brad, isn't it? Also, Nemesis is super long teeth. Kind of strange.
I'm okay with the teeth. They do look strange, but they also look creepy and.
What I'm curious about in this regard is because I'm not super experienced with the Resident Evil series prior to 4 because I didn't grow up with the games because bloody and Tim Bray, it's too scary. But from my understanding, RE2 seemed like a pretty ballsy game to remake to me because it seemed to be very of the 3 games that came out on the PlayStation 1, that seems to be the one that's really held up. In terms of this is the great game of this era. And 3 seems like, oh yeah, and that one. And I hear oh yeah, it's a good game, but it's one that not nearly as many people talk about. And considering the success that the RE2 remake had.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I think if you go back in time, apart from the opening of RE2 and the fact that you had 2 characters, RE3 Nemesis chasing you throughout the whole. It's a pretty short game. So what I'm most intrigued about is how they elongate it into being a fully length game. But man, if you talk to some Resident Evil fans, Nemesis stands out because of just him following you around.
Oh yeah,
more so than Mr.
That
X.
seems to be the thing that I hear is really mixed on. Half the people I hear really like that about the game, and then others just found that annoying and repetitive, or at least maybe that's some older reviews at the time. I don't know. Yeah, because I don't know the. Because like I said, I'm speaking from someone who's only kind of blurred viewed this from the sidelines.
Yeah, no,
and basically, in short, it seems to me like RE3 is more as a game that has more room for expansion in a remake to iterate on its ideas.
I would agree with that.
Which is interesting because RE2 seemed like the game that like, oh, you better be careful with what you touch, and yet they retouched a lot of things and it went over very well. A lot of people really love that remake.
With 3, I think they can probably get away with doing whatever the hell they want because the sense of place in RE3, I mean, you're in the city, but it's expanded a lot more than 2. 2's so good because it takes place in a location that you just learn. You remember it, and it's such a great sense of place, and it's superb example of level design. Whereas 3, Nemesis and a bit more of the action was what stood out about that game. It was, you had Mr. X about
is as well is the sense that I'm getting the sense that this is announced that this wasn't this leaked.
It was leaked.
I don't think it was. Yeah. It was leaked out.
I think it was a Game Awards announcement.
But already, like, so let's say it gets but already, like, just looking from this, like, a box that we have or whatever, immediately it looks similar to the Resident Evil 2 remake. The font, the character design, the visual, like everything about it is reminiscent of that game. So what I'm curious is going to happen is if this game ends up being extremely similar to RE2, using its gameplay and format or whatever, which I wouldn't blame them because it's a really good formula, will it actually end up getting the same kind of response that RE3 got originally, just by it's not going to be as remarkable? Because people will be going into this game and go, oh yeah, it's RE2 with a different formula, which is what RE3 in the past was really viewed as.
Yeah, I don't know. I imagine it'll be less popular than RE2, but it'll still satisfy the same fans.
I think as long as they get Nemesis right, it'll be fine.
And they got Mr. X so good that they can just work with that character.
But if you remember the original and you remember, playing 2 now, Nemesis had a lot more to him than Mr. X did. I mean, that guy just follows you around and then swings a punch at you, whereas Nemesis was like all sorts of fucking trouble.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but when I was playing through RE2 Make, I was surprised that I completely forgot about Mr. X in the original.
Yeah.
I never heard of, because I didn't play RE2, I never heard of Mr. X. And then suddenly when the RE2 remake comes out, my entire Twitter feed is nothing but GIFs of people getting really scared by him. And I'm like, wait, who is that? And I'm like, oh, he was.
You can easily forget about him if the remake doesn't exist when you're playing it.
I mean, only Nemesis is a character in Marvel vs. Capcom. So I'm just putting it out there. Nemesis is a big guy. He's coming back. He's gonna fucking ruin childhood for a whole new generation of people.
I think if we were to predict anything, I think George is probably right, where it's going to satisfy the people that really like this return to what is the belief that Resident Evil games should be, but it's probably not going to make as much of a splash like beyond that circle, because it's just going to look similar and play similar.
I think people were just surprised
it's not going to be
about
as much of a
how
novelty.
good RE2 was as a game. Like, it just came out and they're like, oh yeah.
It's not even just how good the gameplay is. It's also just how amazing it looks, how great the presentation is, how immersive it is. Like, there's so many other qualities.
Using the RE engine, continuing on with that, I imagine you're probably going to get something similar. But, it's going to be bigger in scope. It's going to be the city. I don't know. Yeah. I'm excited, though.
They're kind of niche releases. Like, RE2 Remake sold less than RE7. 4 million copies, which isn't bad, but I highly doubt that the executives at hand are like super duper eager to greenlight these things, no questions asked. I have heard the terminology hearts and minds projects sometimes about video games that aren't necessarily built to gain all of their investment back, but rather for brand recognition amongst hardcore fans. And I've
been told by multiple developers that at this point EA will only publish your game if they believe it falls into one of two categories. Either they believe it can become $1 billion franchise, or it can improve their PR.
Yeah, the PR would be the category this one falls
in. It can give them credibility, essentially, and that's it. Like, I talked to a developer who he got turned down by EA because his game wasn't expensive enough.
What?
Like, it was like a little bit more than an indie game, but it wasn't quite enough to be like a fully budgeted title. So that's why they didn't want to publish it. because EA seems to be just completely disinterested in the mid-market, despite that being what all their games were founded upon. Dead Space wasn't exactly hugely AAA. Like, it had definitely good resources and stuff like that, but it was never marketed or set up by Visceral Games to be this end-all be-all brand for EA. It was just like, oh yeah, just Resident Evil Space. We're just making a Resident Evil Space game. Oh, holy shit, people really dig this, and it kind of took off. Okay, let's make a sequel.
Speaking of making weird things that people really dig that don't become sequels or succeed in the marketplace, the Steam controller has been discontinued this week. When I'm sure you guys noticed when you were doing your Black Friday shopping that the Steam Autumn sale was rolling out with this $5 fire sale of the things. They are liquidating.
that was rather on the nose. However, it was is that Valve just had a warehouse full of these things and needs to get rid of them.
Rest in peace, Owlface.
They haven't cited any reasons why. There's no official statement behind Valve about why these things apparently aren't selling enough to keep a stock going. I am real confused about why they don't get another company to outsource manufacturing to. But in either case, it's being discontinued.
Nobody's
We have no
buying them?
They oversold it when they put on $5. The thing has a really
video game controllers cost $50 usually.
It had a very dedicated fan
It's gonna
base.
it's gonna be that thing that is handed to you when you're the fourth player at a party.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, here's that shit. Yeah, I got that for $5.
Somehow you're gonna end up playing Smash Brothers with that thing, and then you're gonna be like, "What the fuck? How did this happen?"
So the Steam. Okay, I know what you guys mean, right? But the Steam controller also feels like a product that should be on the back pages of Amazon somewhere. Like, I can buy cheap HDMI switchers that are of a way more specialized purpose than this from a outsourcer in China.
Everybody who plays with a pad on Steam uses a USB Windows, Xbox 360, or Xbox One controller. You're fighting a market where you're never going to win, and your controller is ergonomically more complex, harder to construct because it doesn't use more traditional molds, and is like more expensive probably to put together because it uses sensory technology for the pads. So why would you? If you're not selling, why would you continue to do so? You're not going to beat your competition.
I will say, like, as someone that I actually bought one and the link very recently because I saw one on eBay pop up for relatively cheap considering their typical price here in Canada, because I think again a lot of them didn't ship over here. And the immediate thing that comes to my mind when using this thing that is immediately to my head, like it puts alarm bells, are the awful triggers, and that the sensor here feels far too much like a trackpad when you're learning how to use it at first. I understand that once you get the hang of it, once you learn how the system fully works, and especially if you're like some people and you start incorporating the gyro aiming and getting used to that it can become a very unique and precise tool that is probably superior to a controller experience. But the thing that's kind of at a crossroads is that the controllers are already way too complicated for most novice players. Already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I'm watching Nolan North play through Last of Us and him having to look down at his controller every time the game says press whatever, and he's like, oh, which one? Okay, that one. Like, that's the common consumer in use. So to have a controller that is complex for a hardcore market is a kind of weird, already an inherent mismatch kind of from the start.
Well, what about the specialty market where like joysticks and throttles?
Yeah, that's the thing is that I think you could get a company to take this blueprint that Valve started with and market it as a specialty controller.
Right.
Because I can tell you that after I use this thing, I'm like, oh my God, I could actually envision myself playing Civ on the couch now. I never did before. Never in a million years would I do that. But with this thing, I could do it.
I'm being reluctant and wistful about the death of this thing, but even I am not the greatest fan of it. I found that it really only elegantly works for Civ, but the thing is that there is a learning curve. Apparently, if you get real good at the Steam controller, it's like the best thing ever. And maybe I don't know how expensive a gyroscope is to throw in, but you can go on Amazon and search for all sorts of weird specialized stuff, and it seems like yeah, there are throttles and joysticks that are for a even smaller market than this. I don't know why they can't keep it going through another
As somebody
company.
that recently invested in a direct drive wheel Kickstarter, like online, I am very familiar with these specialty markets.
But is that a tool that does something specific?
And if people can sell $830 pedals to people, there must be some application to sell something like a Steam controller.
But that does something specific, right? Whereas the Steam controller is a controller you use with video games where there are already options out there that are far more popular.
Well, it makes sense to me for like the gamer that has everything, so sort of purchase for that. Like it is a multi-purpose
$5?
video.
Yeah.
It's a multi-purpose video game controller that like smushes together other stuff. In my case, I did end up really appreciating it, but not as a game controller, but as a way to use the Steam Link without having to break out a mouse and keyboard. And it just,
Right.
I feel like it speaks to Valve's strategy that both of these two first tip of the spear hardware designs that they shipped out that I ended up becoming a fan of were for not their intended purpose. The Steam Link became a great way to watch movies and TV shows on a different TV than your gaming PC. And the Steam controller became a nice way to sit on the couch and browse the internet.
Do you remember
And-
Steam machines?
Yes,
No.
I do. We're probably the only ones that do, because that was not. I will say, Valve a lot of times gets mocked for their R&D, the Steam machines, the Link, the controller, etc. Honestly, though, I'm kind of glad that they're exploring it, because what other big name publisher is going to put into that R&D? Like many other companies, because they're publicly traded, they can't really afford to be an R&D based company. That's the way I view Valve. I do view Valve as a research and development, an entity that just happens to make games occasionally that are really fucking good. And a lot of their games innately come from they're exploring some sort of mean, be it online gameplay, be it physics-based gameplay, whatever.
It is
That
intriguing
is
to see,
encouraging
though,
that.
considering how popular Steam is and how much money Valve have, that every single one of their products has come and gone.
They could make 40 Steam machine type failures and still be okay. Like over like multiple years. Like they're in that position.
There's crazy people like you will be by the index. And that'll keep them going forever.
To be fair, I understand that, like, if I was in the position that I was, say, 3-4 years ago, I was just a common consumer and living paycheck to paycheck, there's absolutely no way I would do this. I'm only getting an index in the case that I'm in a very particular place of making videos on games and stuff like that. And being in that position, I do actually start to understand specialty markets.
Yeah.
Because there's just, I can tell you, I've only used the index for like an hour. Already, I'm like, yeah, I've got my Oculus packed up, because it is so much clearer. The field of view is so much better. And yeah, there's just, and being at that, having that experience innately on hand, it just makes you so curious for the future. Personally, something I find really fun about VR space is that it is like games in the early 2000s and 90s, where a lot of the evolution is going to be problem solving, not budget or resource based, but just whoever comes up with the solution first.
Let's not glorify the system too much. The reason why specialty markets work is because $100 is less money to a rich person than a poor person.
Absolutely.
The only
It
fucking
absolutely
reason that we can afford to throw around money on this is because we're doing okay right now.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We can afford the expenses. I can tell you that the next few months, I'm going to try really hard to not spend money, because like I already got monitors and stuff like that. And then my desk broke on me because it's like purpose built and specialized. And like it basically, the index essentially came out at the worst time for me. And yet I was still stupid enough to buy one anyways.
The first traffic ticket I ever got in my life was after the Patreon. And I just like couldn't believe that I could just, it didn't even feel like a consequence.
Yeah.
Like I almost wanted to go get caught speeding again immediately afterwards, because
You know how rich people.
it's fucking disgusting, actually.
That's the thing. We know rich people. We're not even rich. We're just doing okay.
Matt, should we just leave?
Yeah, you should just leave.
God.
You're like those people in California that have these like very expensive cars that like park where they shouldn't. at all.
Yeah, because they can get away with it.
'Cause
They
they
can
can get
actually
away with
afford
it.
it, and that's actually how it works.
Car towed? Get a fucking Uber.
I remember on Top Gear years ago about them talking about a speeding ticket in America of a guy in a Bugatti Veyron who was caught at doing 230
Jesus.
miles an hour, and his speeding ticket was $500.
Okay, that's a
Wow.
lot
Now,
more than mine.
No, but considering, hold on, this is a guy with a $1 million vehicle. Do you really think that $500 is of any consequence to
No,
him?
dude, his oil
$500
change is like
is not, the cost of the
$10,000.
kid he might have slammed into. But God,
Yeah,
man, mine was a small town in Georgia. The ticket was only $80, and that's a video game. That is
Yeah.
a video. You can either have a video game or have a fun evening speeding until you get caught.
So
Fuck,
like a video
you
game.
enjoyed breaking
Depending
the
on the
law?
video game, that could be very much preferable.
I didn't, but this opened my eyes and made me realize how someone could actually get away with how someone could enjoy breaking the law and actually make a habit out of getting away with it. Set up their insurance and their license and spread out the tickets long enough to take a joyride during a mathematically picked day.
God, life is so unfair.
Isn't it interesting that the Steam controller led us to discovering more about George's innate tendencies?
I don't even have a car because I've never felt safe
It's
purchasing
because
one.
it got taken away from you after you fucking was caught speeding 10 times, flaunting that Patreon
The
money.
one holiday when I decide to rent a car, I get a speeding ticket, so that's not making me any more eager to take the plunge of a $20,000 down payment with $400 monthlies. Fuck that. I'd rather buy VR stuff.
God, I remember getting my first ever speeding ticket here in Japan in my second year here during a time when I just had no money, and it cost about $90, I think, and I was like, this is the end of the
And
world.
that probably
This is
encouraged
the
you not
fucking
to speed.
end of the world.
Yeah, what a consequence to your dangerous actions.
Oh my God. Shut up, you. You can't talk.
I can't, but I'd like to. I
It's the
would have
fucking-
preferred.
The roads of Georgia are my highway.
No, I don't like this. Ah!
Is it weird
Essentially,
Ghost
like
Rider.
going to that, yeah, but going to the specialty markets again, like the index for me, it's like I'm in a position where I'm lucky enough to be able to afford one and buy one, but then at the same time, I'm not exactly rich enough to then be able to just throw my Oculus away like into the trash. Like, no, I want to sell that thing to get some cash back.
I'm
because-
holding on to my PSVR for future backwards compatibility with the PS5.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're in that position, like we can afford, to have some spending sprees, but to the point where like, okay, now we got to do something to make that back a little bit because this is not good.
I love that I have lived a life where Labo VR is the extent of my ability to...
You guys want to? We don't got time for the rest of the news. We got to do listener questions.
Wait.
Riot Games is in trouble, but not as much as it seems because $10 million to rich people is less than it is to the rest of us. 1,000 female employees who worked at Riot Games from the last 5 years is getting a payout from a $10 million pot. Divide that between 1,000 employees, you get $10,000. Disperse those payments among all the lawyers and paper pushers who are going to want a cut of it along the way. The class action lawsuits rarely pay out as much as they sound like.
They didn't talk
It's a
about the
couple
dick
months
pics,
rent
though.
essentially.
It sounds like a big win for the unions, but it's like when Facebook got fined $7 million, I believe that's the number, for distributing fake news during the election, and $7 million is a drop in the bucket. That actually,
Yeah,
that's the cost. It's like my speeding ticket, my $80, throw it away and forget about it, and just don't get another speeding ticket for 2 years. Speeding ticket.
Yeah, just apply that several times over, and you've got the Facebook situation.
The super fucking rich can't afford to pay the fines for crimes, which basically creates a system where the rich people are allowed to commit more crimes than the rest of us.
I mean,
And up
Thanks,
to and
Riot.
including a Supreme Court case that may or may not happen soon. Again, since the 70s, trying to decide whether or not the president can commit crimes. Imagine, if you will, you got farted in your face by your chief operating officer, won a big settlement. However, making a stink about it means that you have far less employment opportunities in the future with which to buy more VR index sets with your big with your big fat stacks of a class action lawsuit payout.
Should we just basically be really on the nose about this? this has been an abhorrent situation for some time. Like, I've not heard anything positive about working at Riot in any number of years. It's been a complete joke in the way that they get so much bad press, and yet they will then do stuff that is so tone deaf. It's like, didn't they host like a conference that was then, oh, no guys in this conference? Like, guys, you can't just fucking do a heel turn and think after years of this shit going on behind closed doors, it's now coming to light. It's not that simple. And yeah, like you said, that lawsuit, they're absolutely, people involved with Riot are going to make that seem like a big act of humility.
Yeah.
And it's not. It had to be taken to court, and the people are still there.
Yeah.
And the people who were hurt had barely got anything in return.
And this only happened because of a Kotaku article, which is even crazier. This only came about because of pushback from a Kotaku article.
So wait a second. We're living in the same year where a bunch of video game journalism exposés triggered a class action lawsuit that at least got some people paid some money in some weird way. And the sequel to Half-Life 2 is coming out. Shenmue 3 is coming out.
It's already out.
Hideo Kojima finally stopped making Metal Gear.
Doom 2's coming out again in a little bit.
This is like... I feel like the universe is just kind of throwing us
There's
a
a new
softball.
Half-Life game.
2019 is a softball before the universe gets shitty again, I'm sure. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to space.
Enjoy.
It's quite bizarre.
First questions from Wes Craven. Oh, wait a second. First question was sent to dadandsonspodcast@gmail.com. If you also would like to send the first, second, or third questions to dadandsonspodcast@gmail.com, please send them to dadandsonspodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that's dadandsonspodcast@gmail.com. Our first question is from Wes Craven.
Like the Wes Craven.
Who says, hello there. I was waiting on it. I don't know. It's a spooky mystery. Hello there, sons and dads. I got a question. Is there a great, fabutastic 12 out of 10 game that makes you want to throw up immediately when you're thinking about it? I'm not talking about VR sickness or motion sickness, although that could be a factor. What I mean is that you are playing a great game at the worst possible moment in your life, and it affected the memories of the experience with terrible, repulsive recollections of physiological or even mental sicknesses you might have been suffering through at the time.
Halo 3.
What happened to you during Halo 3?
I was like 13, 14, 15. So basically the shittiest part of anyone's life of like trying to figure out who it was.
The Morty ages.
Yeah, of like, and I have so many times, basically it's that game that where I was just suffering from an addiction where I would get on to play even when I did not want to play it at all. And I'm honestly kind of glad that I got to re-experience Halo 3 through MCC, through El Dorito, because I'm like, oh, this game is really fucking great. And I was just in a really bad place at that time and was basically only playing it one way, when the strength of Halo 3 is that there's an almost infinite number of ways to play that game.
Maybe this will help you out. I hang on, I'm gonna channel my inner therapist here. What I find can sometimes help us deal with past traumas is remembering an event not as something that caused the trauma, but rather something that you held on to throughout the trauma. So maybe what you're really remembering here is that the strength of Halo 3, as you've recently discovered, was what got you through that hard time in your life.
Perhaps it was. And perhaps I was, just thinking that I wish that I was in a better place to enjoy the game even more at that time. But it's not like something I'm bitter about because the universe worked out fine. Halo 3 came back. It's a great game still. I can still go back and play. And also, I happen to know enough people that we can back on Halo pretty much any time and still continue that experience.
So you other guys got one?
Super Mario Odyssey.
That was recent.
It was.
Oh shit, I bet it was a Japanese natural disaster.
No.
Or moving. I bet it was moving.
No, it wasn't. It was just similar to Raycevick. Basically just a bad time. Just a really bad time.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we started, around the time we started Dad and Sons, they was coming off the back of some a rough few months for me.
I've pieced it together. I know what
Super Mario Odyssey came out at a real rough time for me, and obviously it's a game I was incredibly excited about. But playing it was both bittersweet. It made me happy because it's Mario, and I love Mario games. but it was happening around a time where I couldn't really enjoy anything.
You think
so...
you'll be able to play it again without triggering those memories? Or are they just permanently attached to the game now?
When I think back to when I played, because I've only played it once, I just think of the time I played it. Not the game itself, but just the time with which I played it. I think there are certain like TV shows that have the same effect for me where I will have only watched them once, but they'll remind me of a very specific time. I don't know if I played Super Mario Odyssey now, the game would trigger the memories, but every time I think of the game and the first time I played it, I would be like, oh, that was during so-and-so time. So I don't know. But it's intriguing to think about it.
Matt, you got one?
I can't think of one, but I'm pretty sure there's one, especially around that time as well.
Really? Did we all just have really bad 2015s, 14s, 17? Oh, I was
2017.
off. I was off.
2017. It was that year was kind of rough. Yeah, for sure.
It was, right?
Yeah. I remember trying to get into Prey, and I couldn't get into Prey. I was just like, I'm just not in the mood. I needed something very specific to like cheer me up.
Yeah, and Prey is, if anything, it's a lot of things. It's not that.
It's not that.
I was very, very sick as a child when I was playing through the water temple in Zelda Majora's Mask. And I was extremely nauseous and headachy for 2 straight days, which was the time of that game where I was going through that temple. And I've played through that game and absolutely adore it. I've played it like 10 times since, and every time I get to that water temple, I have memories of how bad that sickness was. And I just don't know if they'll ever go away. I think they're permanently attached to that game, like how Ocarina makes me remember the smell of fresh N64 cartridges in the summer of '99.
So you did not buy Majora's Mask 3D, is what I'm getting.
I didn't even think about how I didn't, but maybe this is the complicated psychological butterfly effect at work. I will happily play Majora's Mask up until that point, and then I just start getting a bad feel. And to be fair, it's not the game's best dungeon either, but it shouldn't...
Yeah, the Water Temple, from what I understand, I know nothing about Zelda, but I've heard like many jokes at the Water Temple's expense.
The water levels are always everyone's favorite.
I still credit Metal Gear Solid 2 for having a backtracking underwater escort mission. It is like every hateful piece of game design packed into a 5-minute sector of awfulness.
But it's okay because it's postmodern.
It's Kojima.
So let's wrap things up with a quick answer to one of the hardest, most complicated questions we're ever going to get in our lives on this podcast. I am eager to see how we try to get out of here after 2 hours after this one, because this is a doozy.
I don't feel like I'm not sitting up straight enough. I need to check my posture here.
We ready? Sons and dads, are we all strapped into the SUV here?
I got my seatbelt.
Yeah, hold on.
Hard and tough.
Colin B asks, growing up, games were my primary source of entertainment. Being the typical skinny, nerdy white boy, I didn't go outside much or pick up an instrument. I played games. This was fine at the time, but now I'm 24, and the years of only consuming one entertainment medium have caught up to me. I want to be able to relate to people my age and form connections based on common interests, and having, quote, plays video games, quote, as my defining personality makes that difficult. So finally, my question is, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Have you ever been in or known someone in a similar situation?
I mean, to me, I'm a media soak personally. Like, I've mostly consumed media, but to be fair, like throughout most of my life, it was just video games. And I was in that same place. And 2 things happened. One, I happened to stumble into other like-minded people throughout my life that were in a similar position. And 2, I broadened my expansion of media and started to realize how many commonalities there really are in games, because games use everything, because games inherently use audio, visuals, interactivity, all that. When you go to movies, or you go and you consume albums, or you read through a book, you start to see a lot of parallels and start to see the similarities and start to view entertainment through a much broader lens of connections. Basically, everything makes a lot more sense. And because you have that, you can then start to interact with people that maybe don't play games, but they consume other types of media that can get them into just as much of a role as being someone that played through a game 4 or 5 times on hardest difficulties and stuff like that. And those similar passions have enough connections that any conversation, interaction, and personalization there can be had, in my experience anyway. So like that'd be my main thing, is that
So it's like a
absolutely
gateway.
Yeah, it really is a gateway. So like to me it would be don't be hardcore about it. Don't say like, oh, I have to get a favorite movie or I have to get a favorite album or something, but just explore. Just broaden your horizons, and through doing that you will very likely stumble into other like-minded people that will appreciate your company.
Yes. I guess I have been in your shoes. And what happened to me was I started to kind of explore, just like Ray said. I got into music. I got into movies. I got into, like hiking, trying stuff that you normally wouldn't do. Normally you'd be like, oh, I'm not going to go hiking, or I don't know, go to this thing. You gotta try it, because if you don't try it, you won't know. And like for instance, we were talking about this the other day. There's tools like Meetup.com.
Yeah.
Where you literally could just type in something you might be interested in your area.
That's how
and then
adults
try
make
it.
friends.
Yes. But what this does is I don't know where you live, because it definitely depends on where you live. But here in California, Meetup is like something totally different over here. You go there, and then people are just kind of open to just having conversations. And if you have that in your area, that's a good way to kind of like have different voices instead of just your own in your head, if you're just spending most of your time inside your house. Because it's good to have people with multiple experiences and just other tastes than your own. And I would like to say that most people in the world are not shitty, and most people in the world would like, talk to you, and see what you like. And even if, they don't have anything in common, they can still enjoy a conversation with you. You have to start somewhere.
I think it takes skill to get to that point. Like I think I've talked before about how I didn't learn small talk until like 22 years old. Like growing up as an only child, you just straight up get less experience points in your social attribute.
So I didn't grow up like that. Obviously, I've always played video games. I've always loved video games. I make video games for a living. So of course there's been a fascination for video games my whole life, but I was always open as a kid to playing sports or like skateboarding or listening. Like I got into music. Like I was super hardcore into like metal when I was a kid. So I met people by going to like gigs and stuff like that. So for me, it was never a problem. But the people I was always drawn to, like my best friends, were always people like you. Like they just were obsessed with video games, because for me, the number one priority was like video games all the time, even though I did a whole bunch of other things. But I am thankful that I had these different experiences, because I met a whole bunch of different people that made it a lot easier when I, grew up and I moved around the world and I talked to people from all various places. And I think one of the things you'll find is that, especially now, you're kind of, I don't want to say you're lucky that you live in an age like now where you can go to a place like PAX and meet a million people like you, but are into not just video games, but they're into like board games and D&D and I don't know, like tabletop stuff or music.
Easier to make internet friends than it ever used to be, and also meet up with them. It's so much safer and easier to meet up with internet friends in real life than it ever used to be.
And while you might have like a commonality there that you both played the same Mario game when you were a kid or something like that, like they will understand what your passion is for what it is you like, and you won't be known as just the dude who plays video games. You'll just be a dude who knows a lot about video games. Like I know a heck of a lot about video games. I know a heck of a lot about making video games, but I also know a lot about Manchester City Football Club. So it's like, you need to just like go out and meet people, and they will introduce you to things. Like Matt, and you've heard me and Matt talk on the show about D&D and also like the gym and hiking and various things. Sometimes you've just got to like take one plunge and do something that you never thought you'd like, and you might end up loving it. There'll be plenty of things you fucking hate. Like, you'll like go to a cooking class because you think that's the thing you should be doing, and you'll realize you're not George and you hate cooking like I do. And that's fine, because you might find something else.
And the other thing too with those experiences is that even if it's a bad experience, that to me is just another way to learn more about yourself along the way and to better yourself.
You just know that's not for you, and
you're
that's
24,
fine. But you can still be friends with people who enjoy that, and you will be thankful that you just made a connection through those people. Like as Matt said, going to meetups, going to places like PAX. Like, it's weird to say, but I feel like PAX is probably one of the safest places I've ever been to in regards to having so many people who are so alike yet like hundreds of different things: card games, board games, tabletop games, media, music, video games. Like, it is this weird space where everybody is kind of on the same level about how they understand. Everybody has a passion for something, and that's okay. That's totally okay.
And you're in the right spot right now because you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And you're 24. That's not a bad age. You're thinking about it at 24. You're not fully there yet, you know? Once you hit 25, 26, and, you know, you start to really come into your own.
Once you got to get your own insurance.
Yeah. You know? It's like,
once you get to the point where you're getting closer to a point where you might start thinking about a will. Not writing it, not making it, but, you know, slowly along the way. Like, I have a couple of things to leave behind.
Once you start thinking about how it's actually pretty miraculous you managed to make it as long as you did. You guys ever get that? Like, sometimes I think about all the near-death experiences I've had in traffic and stuff, and I'm like, wow, I actually made it to 30 up.
The thing that made it to me, because like I'm only 25, but in my case it was on my, like, even on my bookshelf here, I've got a book of a hometown hero over here, Greg Moore, who was a racing driver, like who died at 24, and it was the thing from my head. I was like, holy fuck, I've now lived on this planet longer than he did. And like, he was someone I idolized, and now I'm like, what the hell? This is weird.
Yeah, like, and then, how young was Alexander the Great? Way younger than all of us, and then died way younger than us. But
yeah, Kurt Cobain was 27, and you're like, what? Like, it doesn't matter how old you are anyway. Like, you just
life is short, life is short, but it's also very long at the same time. So basically, at 24, that is by no means too late to broaden your horizons and explore more things.
Like a small example of like of a completely different person in a completely different culture doing something similar is a very good artist friend of mine who is like 35, you know, 11 years older than you, but he's been an otaku his whole life, obsessed with like video games and robots and everything. But recently we kind of noticed with him, he's been making small changes. Like, his desk is super clean. He bought like a tiny little cactus for it that he looks after and he waters. And I like talked to him about it and asked him some questions, and he was like, I just wanted to make a better change in my life. And he's been like reading a lot of like traditional Japanese Zen books, and he's like, I never paid attention to this stuff when I was a kid and stuff, but now as I get older, like, I feel like change is good and I should do more stuff like this instead of just drawing robots all day and stuff, which he's fucking great at. But, you know, it doesn't matter how old you are, and it doesn't matter how small the change is. If it's making you feel good and it makes you feel like you're making progress, just go ahead and do it.
It's a healthy thought to constantly progress. That's all I'm saying.
I think we answered it pretty more succinctly than I expected.
I never even told mine.
What, George? What? You want to wrap up, George?
I think I had the revelation at 22 when, like, I went all through middle school and high school and college not really doing a whole lot besides playing video games or connecting with people or talking to people about a whole lot besides video games. But at 22, I noticed I was really getting into bicycling as I was bicycling to and from work a lot. I decided to do a cross-country bicycle tour, and it was literally like a 2-month process. Suddenly, I figured out how to talk to people. I figured out how to have a list of cool short stories I could use to start conversations, and it really did make life easier. Life was hard before and easy afterwards. It's a real ass thing. You put points into your social skills, kids, and it makes dating easier, it makes shopping easier, it makes making friends easier, it makes calling your landlord to pay your bills easier, it makes talking to your doctor about embarrassing stuff easier. There's so many ways that I don't think a lot of people appreciate well-developed social skills improving someone's day-to-day life with. Like, that confidence boost is a real thing that made me feel healthier and happier and more confident about the future, and I probably would not have had the confidence to start a YouTube channel had I not. Unfortunately, you got to do it, though. You got to throw yourself out there very deliberately, and it's scary, and you got to weigh the risks.
At the end of the day, you can't have someone else. It's always good to have people that can to encourage you and all that, but you ultimately have to take the action yourself. Yes. And I think almost all of us have had that sort of aha moment. For me, it was university. I feel like who I was before going there and 8 months later coming out was a completely different person, simply because I went from, mostly, isolated at home and, just going through courses and being in a depressed state to having to organize my life, having to do crappy things like get up at 5 a.m. and take multiple buses and ferries and stuff, having to interact with people when I'm only hooked on coffee for hours on end and 4 hours sleep.
The grass for sure, confirmed by science, is greener, because nowadays I actually miss that. Oh God, I wanted that so much. Being your own boss and on the clock all the time in your own lonely ass little house is the fucking... It's cool at first, but the grass is always greener, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, George. What are you complaining about?
I don't even fucking know, because I don't even like complaining about it, and that causes me to feel some anxiety that tears my sense of personality and identity apart.
And you'll always want more. You'll always want more.
No, we're going downhill. We answered the question well, and now we're going downhill.
And you'll always want more.
George, stop yourself.
When I'm curled up on my deathbed with my Metal Gear Solid 3 machine, I want to be satisfied. I don't want more. At some point, we gotta... But... well, because isn't that the problem with the video game industry? Is that the investors keep wanting more? So this is like where I'm going to begin the spoiler section, right here with me saying because this is the Dad and Sons podcast where we begin our sentences with things like and like. So this is 3 weeks in the waiting. We got our Death Stranding spoiler cast up here, and it's just me and you, Matt.
It's just me and you. This is so late. We should have did this like last week.
Liam has said he might pick it up again in the future, but doesn't know if the window is going to be soon enough to participate. Neither of the two guests we've had on have been either playing Death Stranding or keen to participate in a Death Stranding spoiler chat. It's just you and me.
Yep. Well, let's see how this goes, because it seems like you have a big hard on for it. So
Oh, dude, it's huge.
Oh my
God, we're rock hard, and we're about to find out how hard it is by doing a thing that I started with the Evangelion spoiler chat, in which Liam and I tried to recite the increasingly batshit insane plot of Evangelion from memory. How in the world would the plot of Death Stranding sound like from memory? Are you ready to start this off, Matt?
Yeah.
All right. Let's alternate between the two of us. Every time we say a single sentence, the next person says the next sentence.
I don't know if I'm going to remember. Okay. All right. I'm ready.
A apocalyptic event causes a lot of people in the United States to just drop dead for some reason no one really knows about.
Okay. Sam Bridges loses his family. loses his family, and he's the only one who survives because he has dooms.
Wait, is he Sam Bridges at that point in the timeline, or is he Sam Porter?
No, he's Sam Bridges at the time.
But okay.
He's Sam Porter after that event.
Okay, because after the apocalyptic event, people decide to name themselves off of like silly descriptions of themselves. So if you're a transporter, you're a porter. So that's why he becomes Sam Porter Bridges after the apocalypse.
Oh, so is it because they lost all their generations? Is that what it is?
No, the real reason why is because it's stupid.
Right, because your name no longer exists because your grandparents and everybody's
That's
dead.
the stupidity of it, is that they completely forget about the prior generations. But the logic and idea behind it is that, like in the Middle Ages, when populations were increasing, it was no longer good enough to just have one name. You had to have your name, maybe your town, your father, your job. So, anyways.
Okay, so and then after that.
Oh god, when a bunch of people die, and it causes an apocalyptic event, and then they blow up. People who die blow up. They just.
You mean they go inside the?
They get
big
grabbed
neck,
by ghosts, and they
no
explode,
neck.
and the
Big-
explosion
no head, big neck
displaces a lot of earth and forms new
Wait,
mountains
what?
and new lakes that separate people.
That's what it
and break.
Wait,
Well,
what?
you can see it in the environment. There are like all these craters and perfectly formed holes everywhere with mounds of mountains around them.
Right. Okay.
What happens next, Matt?
Sam Porter runs over Fragile, but she's not that fragile.
His bike breaks because it is fragile, and that's the twist. So what did him and Fragile even do in the cave, if I remember right? I think they just say hi and move on with their lives, and it takes like 30 minutes.
It's a pointless scene.
Oh fuck, we forgot to talk about the rain.
The rain that doesn't hit him no matter what. All he's wearing is a damn raincoat, and he doesn't get touched by the rain?
Rain is bad. That's part of the apocalyptic event. People. Okay, so the Death Stranding is that people blow up when they die, ghosts become real, and rain is poison.
Right. Umbilical cords, though. The umbilical cords tying them to the earth.
It's a metaphor for online extremism and social networks in the 21st century in a post-Trump, post-Brexit era. No, I'm not even. This has been confirmed by interviews by Kojima.
Wait, what?
I'm not bullshitting you. He has said that the isolation that these bunker dwellers in the game experience is supposed to be a metaphor for people hunkering down in their own social media bubbles and not compromising and communicating with the other side of their disputes online.
Wow. Okay.
So you run around. Wait, no. Are we still describing the plot synopsis or just like the overall themes of the game? Because I feel like they're two very different things. The plot synopsis is batshit insane and stupid. The themes make a cool kind of sense, and that's the difference between the two. Is the difference between story and plot. Because what did they do in the cave with Fragile? I don't know.
The monster.
Oh yeah, monsters
just
come
so
up.
happens to not touch them. The monster walks around where they are.
Okay, so
the time.
That's the purpose of the 30-minute cutscene, to introduce us to our main and secondary character and how the monsters work. And it takes 30 minutes to do that.
What? That the monsters never touch Sam?
Yeah, that if you just
they
like
walk right
quietly,
in front of Sam, like, oh, I don't want to go that way.
Hold your breath and stay still. That's how you beat the bad guys in this game.
And they turn directions. They go around you instead.
So Fragile just like zooms off into the sunset while Sam walks very slowly and painfully to Capital Knot City.
Do you like the BTs are always floating? So where does where are they on the floor at all? Is it only when they see you that you start seeing stuff hit the ground?
Sam gets a mission from the President of the United States to go walk to the west and reestablish.
Also his mom.
His mom is the president.
Somehow.
On the way, he's gonna install people's internet, rebuild the roads and the bridges, and try to reestablish the links of communication that make the country of America happen, which in this game is the United Cities of America instead of the United States.
Wait, hold on. Oh, let's talk about that. Wait, that's his mom.
Yeah.
But Cliff is his dad?
Cliff is BB's dad.
Yeah, but in the cutscene, Norman Reedus says, "Is that me?" And Cliff is talking to him in the flashback.
I remember Cliff killing his wife for some reason I didn't really understand.
And then he says, "Is this me?" That's what Sam says.
Really?
I'll pull it up for you while you say the synopsis.
I remember when you said that you fell asleep during the ending.
What, me?
Yeah.
I did drowse. Not that one. It was the other ending. Not that ending, the other ending. The first ending, the one where you're on the beach.
Yeah, I appreciated that.
When you're on the beach waiting and you're just walking around, you just keep getting sucked back to the same point. And she's just talking.
And there's a button on the controller you can press that makes Sam yell out into the distance, "Is this it? Is it? I'm not done yet." And it just echoes on forever. I really appreciated that. I have a very long-winded explanation. It's very weird and probably not the way most people played and interpreted this game. Are you ready?
Yeah.
How familiar are you with the cinema of David Lynch?
Not a lot. I didn't watch Twin Peaks a lot.
He has an extremely lethargic style. There's very, very dark sets with quiet, droning music and slow close-ups on people's kind of neutral facial expressions. And it makes me sleepy. And I've always enjoyed them, but I've never really been able to actually stay 100% awake and cognizant throughout most of the David Lynch big hitter movies, like the really slow, creepy ones like Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway and Eraserhead. And in Japanese kabuki theater, it is considered quite appropriate and okay to be dazed in and out of sleepiness when watching the production. And I'm wondering if this game is not necessarily intended to be consumed while half asleep. But if that was something, if these were two inspirations that Kojima looked at to create a product that is very visibly influenced by two different mediums of entertainment that are meant to be consumed while kind of sort of half asleep, or at least not meant to, but can be interestingly and enjoyably consumed while half asleep.
Wow.
I don't know if you remember, but MGS4 had some kabuki overtones.
Kabuki?
In MGS3, there's an optional kabuki face mask. I guess Kojima grew up with it. Yeah, and in Japan, it's like an old-fashioned, traditional style of theater that only old people are really into. The rest of us find it boring, supposedly.
I'm gonna send you this cutscene, and there it is. Here, he says it right here. Right here.
Oh, fuck. Oh, you linked me to the dead baby cutscenes.
Look, no,
I don't
watch what he
look
says.
at the
Watch
dead
what Sam says.
Okay, I'll close my eyes, but we gotta talk about that next. Oh, is the BB Sam. Okay, so I guess he's thinking that Sam might have been cloned from BB.
I guess.
But the timeline wouldn't work out because
it wouldn't.
The apocalypse is only like 40 years old, right? He wouldn't have had time to grow up from... Wait, no, maybe... Oh my god, yeah, no, that actually would work out. If the apocalypse is like 20 to 40 years old, and that is a newborn baby on year 0 of the apocalypse, then that baby, if they made DNA clones of that baby, even if that baby dies, and they made clones of that baby later, one of them could grow up to be Sam.
Right. You don't remember this cutscene?
Barely.
Did you fall asleep?
Yeah, I was like lethargic in and out. I remember the wife killing. I remember incinerating it, but I don't remember that one particular line out of like an hour of cutscenes.
But that was like the main thing. Like Cliff was like saying, "Oh, Sam, without you, there will be no future."
No, Matt, I think I know what the problem is.
What?
I was so shocked and upset by seeing a dead baby that everything else just kind of got blurred out. Because no, that's a line. He crossed the dead baby line. How many, I don't know how I feel about that because I really want to like give this game the benefit of the doubt for trying to be weird and artsy and deliberately confrontational. But at that point, it feels overly aggressive. Like I feel like seeing the BB in the pod around all the spooky, scary stuff is super duper tense enough because you're constantly worried about
You know what? What is that going to do to a baby?
And it's not even a baby yet. It's like a fetus.
But
did I pay attention to the story more than you?
BBs are ghost babies that are technically born on the beach.
Wait, what?
In order to manifest them in reality, they need a still mother, which is a concept that they invented for the game to create them in our own waking plane of existence. Because the beach is like a different universe or a different dimension or something. And that's where BBs are supposed to be. And here in the waking world, they don't thrive. They don't live long enough to be born and grown up. But maybe one of them managed to, and that's why Sam says that to his BB. Because yeah, I'm remembering it better now. My interpretation of that scene was that's when we find out that BB was Sam's ghost baby brother. You remember in what's the David Cage game? Beyond: A Tale of Two Souls. You probably don't remember that, but I sure as hell can spoil the ending for you if you're ready.
Oh no, I remember watching Jesse Cox play.
Mm-hmm. You remember the twist at the end when it turns out that your ghost sidekick is your sibling who was dead in the womb? That's what I think is a similar thing going on. BB is Sam's brother from a cloned mother or something. BB is Sam's cloned brother from another mother, but still technically his brother because they have the same DNA from the same parents.
But it died though. But so it has to be a clone.
Well, they're churning them out of an assembly line.
Because they killed the mother. They killed the mother. He killed the mother.
One thing that I'm not too clear on is how many different genetic BB copies there are out there. Because I'm working under the assumption that all the BBs in the world are using Mads DNA. They're all Madsons or Mads daughters.
Who?
Mickelsons. Ned Mickelson. They're Mickelsonsons.
You know what disturbs me is how he came up with this concept. It's a little weird. Like still mothers that are brain dead. Right?
Yeah.
That are sustained, whose babies have been taken to be used by Bridges operatives
I think
bridge babies.
This is overworked Japanese anxiety coming out. Dude, I have elaborate headcanon explanations for a lot of this, even though my understanding of the game's story and events is very hazy. Okay, so I believe that Death Stranding is Hideo Kojima's weed game. Starting around 2015, 2014, we were all finding out that it was taking way too damn long over there at Koji Pro Studios to be making Metal Gear Solid 5. He got, I don't know if sacked is the right word, but pushed into resigning from his employer because his projects were taking too long and too expensive. After that, Kojima makes a lot of friends with Western celebrities like Guillermo del Toro, Mads Mikkelsen, and Norman Reedus. He opens a subsidiary in Southern California at a studio that has an engine he wants to work on, and this gives him an opportunity to take a lot of trips to California. And I don't know how closely you followed the social media connections, if you will, between him and his favorite Western celebrities, but there's tons of pictures of them like hanging out in nature, smiling, just giggling it up, having the time of their lives for some reason in California instead of Japan, where weed is incredibly illegal and will get you thrown in jail for like a joint. So 2 years roll down the road, and Kojima ends up making this game that is about hiking in the woods, looking out at nature, listening to some chill music with a lot of small breaks in the game, smoke breaks, if you will. You know, you can just hold down circle, and all of a sudden Sam is taking a break. There's a lot of clicking through menus. There's a lot of cutscenes. There's a lot of downtime incorporated into a game that is a very chill, slow-paced experience that didn't seem to really come about until after he got greater accessibility to a region where weed is less regulated and more legal.
Wait. It's not his weeb game. It's his weed game?
Yeah, why do you think everyone's thinking so deeply on life and death and society in America, man? It's a game about very broad topics that are brought together by weed logic. It's a game full of weed ideas, weed logic, weed activities, weed music, weed scenery. This is Kojima's weed game. I find it very hard for me to poke holes in this theory. Because, he couldn't come out and confirm or deny it even if he wanted to because Japan, and that makes it rock solid as a theory. You know that Yakuza voice actor who got found with cocaine on him in Japan and how, like, his whole career blew up?
No.
Yeah, if Kojima said that this game might have been inspired by getting high with his favorite Western celebrities and then watching the news about Trump and Brexit, he would definitely lose some solid business connections in Japan that he relies on.
Damn.
Bruh.
You know what? That sounds like... That's crazy.
But it makes sense.
Nuts. Yeah,
you also know how...
it does make sense. Can you imagine? He's just high enough to go through a few years of making a game about his high.
Or at least I guess the ideas he came up with while high. Because You
think he's like smoking with Norm? He's like, bro, imagine if I made a game about fucking bridge babies, bro.
And then he goes home and he has to stay sober for months on end. And he's like, okay, actually, let's follow up on that crazy weed idea and do it justice. That's the impression I get from a lot of this game, is that it's like unpredictable, artsy, crazy ideas that the game was being used as an excuse to dive straight into. So when I think about how the narrative doesn't make a lot of sense, it doesn't upset me as much as most people, because I kind of see it as freestyle jazz. Like just throwing paint onto the canvas, man.
What? No, not jazz. More like that new age electronic music garbage, Not jazz.
Oh, you don't think they use jazz cabbage when making that stuff?
Oh, jazz cabbage, the devil's lettuce.
Anyways.
Maybe a little bit of nose candy in there as well.
I think it's been established at this point that we are not going to be able to summarize this plot.
I mean...
We're 25 minutes in.
I mean, from that 25, I'm pretty sure people remember what they experienced. Hopefully you guys finished it, right? And it's not only us, too, that finish this game.
Because that's the thing. I wanted to talk about how dead babies make me sad and uncomfortable, and how I didn't like...
Wow, we're not going to talk about dead babies for the next...
You can't say that without spoiling Death Stranding, can you, though? Because I feel like I think Kojima might be thinking that dead babies are more shocking than the gaming audience has evidently received it. Because the gaming audience got a lot more shocked and upset over the gameplay being about walking and delivering packages than they did about the story being about dead babies.
No one reached there. No one has reached there.
Yeah. It's a very, very long process, too. And I bet the less player structures you have, the more unlikely it makes it to get to the end of the game, which is something I'm really interesting to see how it ages. So, okay. I think Kojima also imagines this game as being kind of a metaphor for the moon landing.
Okay.
When Kojima was growing up, he wanted to be an astronaut. He thought that the moon landing was like mankind's greatest accomplishments. He made Police Knots before he made Metal Gear. In MGS3, one of the huge plot points at the end was how the boss goes up to space and sees the world without political borders, and there's a lot of stuff Amelie says in this game that mirrors that. Like, she constantly says, we need to make America whole again. And remember when the villains in Metal Gear are the ones trying to make the world whole again? So maybe Kojima's done a heel turn himself on that idea, but the logo for his new studio is an astronaut planting a flag on a dusty, rocky surface. Right. And the game is also a collaborative effort from thousands of people to try and make a long-distance journey that would otherwise not be possible. So I think Kojima is totally putting himself in this thing. It's a game about his ambitions and anxieties doing post-Metal Gear work in a post-Trump world when the one he grew up in was one where people were getting along well enough to go to the frickin' moon. Okay, so I've talked about Death Stranding for 25 minutes, and I feel like I've definitely hogged the mic. Does this help? Because I know that you were more negative on it than I am. Neither of us are as negative as Liam, but I genuinely like the game. I think you're a little more reluctant.
There are some points that I enjoy. I enjoy that this was made.
Oh, I fucking love that it's made. I can't wait for the Call of Duty like peacekeeping spin-off to
Yeah, like I enjoy the concept of it. I enjoy that like he was bold enough to make a walking game. The execution, it's not so good. It's good sometimes. Like at the end, I say I enjoyed the when you had to walk all the way back.
I thought I would hate that, but I ended up quite appreciating it. And that describes a lot of my experience with the gameplay. I was constantly thrown into a situation where something that seemed unappealing ended up becoming, I don't want to say the funnest video game in the world, but definitely a fun video game.
When they said you have to walk back, I was like, oh no.
It's so fast.
But then like I like that you hit like they take away your bike, obviously, because they don't want you just driving everywhere, because that's what I did. As soon as I got it, it kind of just not ruined the game, but like I'll just do that and just ram my bike and glitch it up these stupid rocks, and it didn't feel satisfying.
On week 2 of the podcast, it almost sounded like you were playing a different game than me. Because, like, I can exploit the bike, I can glitch it up hills and stuff, but eventually I do want... Like, I'll want to give it up. It won't feel worth the struggle. I can get the bike into places it feels like you're not supposed to, but I never developed a play style around it. Like, I always felt the temptation to throw it away and do something more interesting, and it was around the mountain part of the game where I totally switched over and was like, okay, yeah, I get it. They don't want me using the bike. I understand. It would take longer if I did.
I would have done it. Yeah, I would have done it. No, the bike is quicker. I would have done it if there wasn't so many BTs around. I use the bike to skip BTs, mostly. I don't want to walk around and have to deal with BTs 3 times before I get to a destination. I just don't want to do it.
You know what I fucking hate, though, is the pause the game does to show your Odorek spinning up.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. The same thing. Over and over again. And then your bike stops. And
Dead stop. On a dime. It doesn't even look like it makes sense.
No, it doesn't. And then... at one time, I was able to like glitch it out by getting off the bike and getting back on, and that was faster than waiting for the cutscene. But it stopped working.
Wait. Describe the glitch. I wish I had figured this out.
Well, like basically, when it was about to happen, I get off the bike, and it would happen on my character, but it wouldn't stop me, and I could just get back on the bike and keep going because I don't want to stop. Like I get it. Like BTs are around. Yeah, I get it. Like let's go. Like BB screams and whatever on the controller or whatever. Like that's all I need. I don't need all that. I wish I could disable it.
I had a harder time finding them than you guys seemed to. Like unless I'm looking at a BT, I don't feel certain about where they're gonna be.
I mean, you can look up in the sky and you see these like strands.
But when you're close and the rain and the fog pick up, the strands disappear and you're supposed to be using your senses. And in my case, I would have ridden the motorcycle a little bit, scanned for BTs, ridden the motorcycle a little bit more, scanned for BTs, maybe throw some pee at one of them, ride the motorcycle a little bit more, and then I'd be out of the area. And it was tedious and it was annoying and maybe could have been done better, but it didn't upset me. Like, I'm definitely less upset by upsetting things in this game than most people, and I realize it's because of my background and expectations and the knowledge. Being able to interpret it on Kojima's level probably changes your interpretation of the game a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like being able to know how it relates to his career and his history.
I mean, that's what you have to expect when you get a Kojima game, though. Like
now
when you saw it, it looked like a walking game. You knew it was going to be a weird thing. If you didn't know, then you weren't paying attention.
And I'm kind of happy with that because I was worried the game would be way less weird than it turned out to be. Because in those trailers that we saw, the reception was always, wow, this looks so weird. But revealed trailers, like the one they showed at Game Awards 2015 of him waking up on the beach naked, that's a weird situation. But revealed trailers like that, they never show gameplay anyway. They always show some cutscene that doesn't look at all like how the game plays. And then a year later, no, it was 2016 that was the reveal. Was it 2019? When did they do the one where you actually see Sam punching people and riding the bike and using the ladder to
didn't
cross a
watch
gap?
anything. This was all fresh to me when I got it.
There was one trailer where you see some basic combat and the World War tunnel shooting segments, and at that point, after that trailer, I was like, okay, maybe people are kind of playing up how weird this game is, because there's some scenes in that trailer that didn't look that weird, and the game turned out to be weird, so I'm happy.
All right, so I'll say I feel like it was kind of like a little lazy. Like, no, it's a lot of lazy.
Yeah.
Like, it was a lot of lazy. Like, first of all, like the walking, it gets old. The driving, it's just, it's not polished.
And
then you have this formula that you run into.
The formula is so transparent, and I don't know if I want to use the word lazy.
The boss battles are garbage.
You can definitely tell there were some corners cut.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like a big epic flagship release from Kojima, more like a side project spin-off experiment of a project. And really, though, I'm also okay with that.
Yeah.
Why would you blow your load on the walking game when you don't know if people are gonna like a walking game or not yet? Like Half-Life Alyx, they're not calling it Half-Life 3, just in case. Like it's an experimental entry into a new way of building the game, and so.
But this is not like his Metal Gear 2, where he does a switcheroo.
It's not a theatrical adventure.
No, this is not like, oh, you play as Reddit. No, this is like it's a walking game. It's going to be boring sometimes. You know, it might make you think about stuff, but it's $60. Like, I keep going down to these prices for some of these games, man. And like, there's so many other games to play, especially around this time. I don't know if I would recommend it. I mean, obviously, this is the spoiler cast already. If you're here listening to this, you probably already played the game or not going to play the game.
And see, when God, I fucking hate saying this. It's like the open secret everyone knows. When you make a lot of money, it does not hurt anymore to spend
$60
an amount. Like I am happy. I would not recommend this game for everyone. I would absolutely positively recommend it for people who are really into game design. Yeah. Or, of course, Hideo Kojima. Like, the way I see it, it was marketed to Kojima fans and delivered something that Kojima fans are probably going to appreciate more than most people. And that is almost how it should be done. Like, we have a movie industry that supports weird projects off of blockbusters, and the game industry's never really been able to adapt to a similar model like that, when it totally fucking could. Yeah. Like, let's see, this was made by Sony. Sony, I believe, makes most of their money licensing movie properties and selling electronics, and PlayStations. This was like a console exclusive, and I think that's the analog for indie movies versus blockbuster movies, is that console exclusives can oftentimes get weird and experiment with a high level of production value because they are not funded on a schedule that intends to sell copies of the game. They are instead intended to sell copies of a console or a brand. And having more projects like this that are explicitly designed to not sell copies and instead appeal to a specialized fan base audience, I think is a very positive direction for the industry to go. It is one that opens the door for many new genres of gameplay, as well as new ways to interact with obstacles in gameplay. Like, what are the obstacles? What are the bad guys in a normal session of Death Stranding? There's the mules, but you're not going to see them in a normal session. Maybe 1 out of the 3 runs you might run into actual typical video game bad guys. So what else is there? There's the rain. There's rocks, literally rocks in your way. There's rivers in your way. There's a time limit. Every step counts. In Death Stranding, I see level design as a smooth path of pebbles through a rocky, rugged mountain slope. Bad guys are, the rain, the boulders in your way, the time limit imposed, your shoes wearing down. And I wish I had said this during the answer to that question about what to do with your life after you realize video games aren't enough.
What would that answer be?
That video games, I feel, help me visualize, inform, myself and plan for real life activities that can be more fulfilling than video games. When I was on my bicycle trip, I had to micromanage my pack. I had to ration water. I had to pay attention to my energy meter, you know? A day, 9 hours straight of bicycling in the desert with a limited supply of water is a very video gamey challenge when you're actually in the shit, crunching the numbers, planning your time out, and keeping track of how your body is performing over time. And I am thrilled, positively thrilled, to see a big budget AAA science fiction video game with a dumbass story turn a video game out of that stuff.
And it reminds me because I just took a hike up Mount Baldy. And that one was 10,000 feet. Like, it took me 9 hours to go up and down.
Yo.
It was the most I've ever done. I've never done something so ridiculous in my life. For me, it's ridiculous. For some of my friends, it's nothing. But for me, it was ridiculous.
The shoes? Did you have to get level 3 bridges boots because your level 1's broke?
Let me tell you, I wasn't prepared for it, but my gosh, I did it. It's despite the lack of water.
When you were playing Death Stranding, did you get that feeling I was getting, where I was like pointing at the screen, being like, "Yeah, I've been there. I've had to deal with that bullshit."
No, and that's what I'm saying. I wish there were sections where it was only about climbing. Like, just a full section. There was like 1 or 2 like routes like in the very beginning where it was just about climbing, and I really enjoyed those parts where you had to take out the ladder and everything, or find like some player ladders in like a certain corner of the mountain.
I'm so sad you didn't get that in the mountains, because I did, and I was really happy to throw away the vehicles at that point. And
see, that's why I wanted it in the mountains. For me, it was just all snowy, and you could just drive up there. There was no rocky points or anything like that. You just drive up the snowy mountain and drive down the snowy mountain, and that was pretty much it.
Were there BTs on those slopes?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember I tried and I was unable to force the bike up those hills.
I drove most of the time after I got it.
You know, up until the mountains, throughout most parts in the game, you get your destination from your order, and it's quite a walk away down a long road.
Yeah.
And the mountains, when I got my first order that was at the top of a cliff that looked like it was something I was not supposed to climb, I was like, oh yes, this is the challenge that this game has been waiting to throw at me. And I ended up going completely around the mountain the wrong way to a dead end that caused me to fall off a cliff and die, and it was the first part in that game where I'd actually died. I have a question, Matt.
Yeah.
How many times did you die in gameplay, not counting all the cutscene deaths?
I died 1 in a cutscene death, which highly annoyed me. Like I told you on the thing, where you were supposed to go to the river. Did that happen to you?
I remember that. It did happen to me, but I don't think I lost as much progress as you did out of it, so I wasn't frustrated.
Thought I did. But what it did is saved right before I drove into the city. But I thought I was outside the city I started at, and I was like, "Oh hell no!"
So wait, you left all those Discord messages, and they were
and
those angry Discord messages.
And that's when I said That's why I went back. I was like, I want to see what happens to you guys. I didn't want to spoil it and say, oh, it saved properly. So I wanted to wait. But you guys never hit it. Liam never hit it, and I guess you already knew.
I had my suspicions, and I made sure to save. Because once you get that box, it says thermonuclear weapon.
Yep.
Handle with care. So I was expecting something to happen, and you had warned me that something was going to happen. And sure enough, I delivered it to the wrong city, and it blew up and gave me a game over. But since it put me just a short walk away, I didn't feel that angry about it.
Yeah.
But I also interpreted that as a Kojima thing, as a Psycho Manus turn off your TV thing, which he does again later on in the game with press R2 to hug. Do you remember that moment?
Press R2 to hug. No.
Yeah. Yeah, you towards the end of the story, very, very end. I think this is just before that false ending where you're walking around on the moon by yourself.
When she's in the water?
Yeah. They give you a gun. The
I shot
people
her,
in the
by the way.
cutscene say, "Yeah, I feel like that's what it's designed to do, is to get you to wake up and pay attention to how easy you are to resort to violence in video games." Because
I shot her and it didn't work, and then I went up to
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, it just goes straight through her. You have to actually open up your menus, fiddle around with some buttons, and have a press R2 to hug prompt show up for it to get working. And I thought that was another really
What? I didn't do
clever,
that.
fun. Wait, what?
No, I just tried to shoot her. I didn't, so
Yeah.
I ran up to her to see if I could hit her, and I couldn't do that. And it just says hug.
You have to put your gun away to hug her. Oh, so you tried to punch her?
I tried to do anything. Like, there's no way that she could just walk away from me.
Yeah, because she triggers a cutscene that just bumps you back a couple minutes. And I was trying everything, but I did not try to punch her.
Yeah, I just walked up to her, and it just said hug.
But if punching her is what triggers it, then I feel like that should have still triggered something in you. Like, the whole while I was like, oh, that clever Kojima, he knew I was going to try to shoot her, and now he's making a point about video game violence. Oh, that Kojima.
One cutscene, and he's making a statement. Only one.
It just went right in and out for you. You didn't raise your arms up and be like, okay.
No. I mean, come on. Come on. This stuff has been done. Like, if you're gonna do something amazing, like, you have to do something great for us to pay attention these days, right?
Press R2 to hug has been done. I can't say a walking game has been done, though.
Well, yeah, not the walking game, and that's what I respect about it. And
that's what I think is different from this than what's been done. Like, this is no Spec Ops: The Line.
I still need
this
to
is
play
a much more honest explanation or exploration of non-violence and video game violence.
And
than a guilt trip shooting gallery.
I did not. I'm trying to figure out when I died, because I know. Oh, I died when I fought Cliff. The second time I fought Cliff.
See, I never died in combat. I only have died from drowning or falling off cliffs.
Oh, no, I did die from drowning, because I wanted to test it. In the very beginning, there was this waterfall, and I didn't know where to go. Like, I was just like, where the hell do I go? And I wanted to see, like, can I swim? Nope. You die immediately into jumping into the water.
Really?
Yeah. I fell off the water, and it just killed me.
And in the bowels of your emails, which is an issue, there are some hints for extras and Easter eggs. Apparently, there's supposed to be something in the big crater lake in the north middle of the western map. And I've tried to ride a bike over there a couple times. I don't know if I'd be able to get over there without more of a player network or exploitation, or even if you're supposed to be able to get to that lake. But I've drowned in the water on the way to that lake, and it was a slow sink. Like, I had a good 30 seconds to turn around if I wanted to. So maybe that's the difference between tar versus water, I guess. Maybe that was tar I was sinking into.
And that's the thing. Like, I wanted stuff like that, where there were things that were probably hard to get to, that probably had something of value. And, of course...
Sometimes they're there,
but... you had to use other players, had to work together to get there. Like, that would have been cool.
Is the prize worth it, though? The memory chips, I don't feel, are a satisfying reward.
Dude, they just say, hey, thanks for thinking of me. Okay, bye. Like, come on. What?
Yeah, that's the formula.
What is
the corners that have been cut. Okay, so I got another question for you. Have you delivered Peter Engelbert's pizzas for him?
Only one.
He will unlock his bunker, and you get to go down and explore it, and there's some revelatory stuff there. But it's totally optional and something you might not find out about until after the main story. If you max out the connection levels to 5 stars, they will invite you into their bunkers to rest, so you can use them like a private room. Unfortunately, though, they did not render the interiors for most everyone's bunkers. So far as I've seen, it's just Peter Engelbert with his pizzas.
Wow.
Yeah, when you max out your connection level and take a rest inside someone's house, it just shows Sam opening the door, closing it, and then he walks back out again 8 hours later.
Oh, never mind. Okay, I thought it was something cool. Never mind.
Well, there's the potential for something cool there, because if you pay attention to one client in particular and do deliveries for them, they'll send you emails and give you extra equipment that tells some kind of story. Like the junk dealer gets married to the chiral artist, but then they break up, but then they get married again. Peter Engelbert and his pizzas, he has some dark, terrible secret to show you that he'll invite you into that ultimately I found to be a bit unfulfilling. But if there was more of that, it's there. I just wish there was more of that incorporated into the main story.
There's no way that the majority is getting 5 stars. I can tell you that for a fact. I need to see numbers if I'm wrong. Because like there's no way that's fun. It's not fun to do those missions.
I thought the story would pick up at the Guillermo del Toro shower scene.
Yeah, right?
And
I was like, yes, this is it.
That was a damn cool scene. I was so looking forward to things getting weird. I laughed for like a minute and a half. Yeah. Straight laughter. Okay, so Guillermo del Toro rushes Norman Reedus in the shower and gives an explanation. And it's funny and hilarious because of body humor and social awkwardness and humor in an otherwise serious game. But also, isn't that a Rick and Morty joke? And in Rick and Morty season 2, he zaps into Morty's universe and says, "Quick, Morty, there's no time to explain. Take a shower with me."
I think so. Man, it's been so long. I think so. Take a shower with me.
And
they did have an ad.
They did a promotional... They did an ad. They did a promo with Rick and Morty. So I wonder if Death Stranding was conceptualized after Hideo Kojima got real high with his favorite Western celebrities, watched a bunch of Rick and Morty, and went on hikes.
Wow. It's definitely...
And yeah, that is how I interpret this game, is a completely different way of judging games than most other things I've played before. And it's like, it's the result of what happens to someone who's on a very personal quest, but expresses it through big budget, soulless video game product. And there is so much of Kojima in this game, more so than Metal Gear, that I think it worked by going that hard. It feels weird for me to say because it is indulgent. Authorship is a masturbatory exercise that obscures the contributions of other people on the team, but I don't know, game industry might as well try everything first, and it feels like this is the first time it's tried to be this indulgent about authorship. And coming from the guy who made Metal Gear, that's taken it to a whole new level. You know, we all thought MGS5 was such a Hideo Kojima game, right? Little did we know.
Yeah. Man.
I got another question for you. Which game makes you more happy?
Oh, shoot.
Death Stranding or Metal Gear Solid 5?
So I'll say what I said before. I enjoyed MGS5's combat. The gameplay was good. It was solid. I found myself playing that. Even on the side. What were those? Those were those side missions you always do to get like money and stuff. I enjoyed that.
The optional challenge. Oh, the fob missions. Yeah.
And there were some ones where you could definitely just take everybody's like materials because they didn't do the work to actually like protect them. So you could just go in there and just take a bunch of materials that you need.
Yeah, fuck you. I have your gasoline.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, and it'll be too late by the time they come back online. But yeah, like I didn't like the gameplay too much in Death Stranding. I would say like not as much as MGS5. So in terms of gameplay, MGS5 was a little bit better, but MGS5's story was just so boring. It was so boring at times, and there wasn't enough weirdness. Wasn't enough weirdness as Death Stranding, or the normal
I
Kojima
agree.
stuff, which makes me feel like, even though I enjoyed my time with MGS5 more, I would say, at least I don't have this feeling of like not being satisfied by the end with Death Stranding. I feel like I'm satisfied because he gave me like 20 endings, you know?
Like overcompensating for the lack of a one last time.
Yeah. Because I like endings. I like something to feel satisfying. I don't like just nothing happening at the end. Like, just like, I'm not talking about like
okay.
What's that movie where you could go inside people's dreams? Inception. I'm not talking about the Inception ending. I'm talking more of like where there's no build up, there's no nothing. It just kind of ends because it was unfinished or they didn't know what to do. I don't like those types of endings.
So you remember the ending in Death Stranding that you were complaining about, where Sam is like wandering around on the moon with nothing to do, and I don't know if you tried it, but if you press the touchpad and get him to yell, he breaks the fourth wall and complains about the ending.
Yeah.
And this is a game all about doing repetitive, soulless work for an invisible employer who's barely even there, that showers you with endless praise for doing a seemingly normal job. Yeah. And then at one point, you eventually sacrifice yourself to wander around after the action with this very explicitly unsatisfied ending. Are you picking up on my Kojima code here? About this being a game about what it's like being Kojima?
Oh my god.
How that part of the game could be read as an expression of how he felt about that game's ending. About how Metal Gear Solid 5 was an exploration of turning exciting action adventures into something banal that's a job that you check into. A lot of MGS5 happens on spreadsheets of managing your employees like you are their boss. And the most exciting parts of MGS5 are when those spreadsheets end up becoming mechanically active and your employers start dying from language disease. And what am I trying to get to? Yeah, Death Stranding is also about turning a seemingly fun hike into boring, soulless work for an employer that's never there. You get showered with empty praise after every single one. You know, you're complaining about how everyone says the same thing, which is, oh, Sam, you're so good. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
But maybe that's an actual expression of what it's like being Kojima.
So he made a terrible game.
You do a job. You do it well enough to where you think you got it done, and for some reason, everyone in the world just showers praise upon you.
I mean, that...
And eventually you make one delivery where it ultimately ends up more of a self-sacrifice with you trapped on the moon, unable to finish what you're starting, and then all of a sudden your famous Western celebrities pull you out of the afterlife back into the real world again and save the day.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of like Death Stranding.
I think just by you doing that, you're actually adding to it. You're actually confirming that people just look so deep into his stuff when it's probably just poop. It's just him pooping, and you watch it. Well,
if that's the case,
you're paying $60 to watch him poop.
Then I'm an alchemist who can turn poop into gold.
Hey.
I mean, maybe more literally than one, because we'll see how much money this YouTube video on it makes. So yeah, I Death Stranding makes me happier than MGSV. The story is definitely stupider, but it's also more eventful and more meaningful and more interesting. I did like the really good stealth missions of MGS5 better in terms of gameplay, but Death Stranding I feel has a better spread. Like, I really liked maybe 3 to 5 missions of MGS5, especially with the optional OCP challenges turned on.
Yeah.
OSP. But here, I haven't had any moments in the game like those missions where I'm just like, oh yeah, this is the best stealth game ever. But I'm also having fun moments where I'm like, oh yeah, this is a pretty good example of what it would be like exploring a walking game, and I don't have a frame of reference to compare that to.
I want to say two things before I forget. One is there was this part where those parts where they don't tell you where to go. I thought those were pretty good. They don't tell you where to go.
What do you mean?
They give you like a hint, and that's pretty much it.
What do you mean?
There's, for instance, one of my favorites where when you're trying to cross the like tar pit or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you anything, but you remember being dragged through the tar.
I have some very bad news.
Oh, you didn't like it?
No, they eventually tell you if you take too long.
Oh.
Yeah. Because I was running away from the BT to heal myself and prepare, and the whole while I was getting radio messages saying, like, Sam, isn't there some way you can pull buildings or something from the past out here? And I'm just like, okay, yeah, Dad, I get it. No, he told me like 3 times before I went and do that.
Buildings from the
I don't
past?
know.
Who says that?
It's not even that hard to figure out. That's how they work. BTs break the space-time continuum. Those buildings are from before the apocalypse.
But why would
That's
he
where all
say?
the
Is
fish
there
are
any
from.
way you can pull building? Like, does Sam have powers like that?
Oh my God. I don't know if that's exactly what he says, but it was something like that. It was days when I played that section.
Oh my God! But if he said that, that would be ridiculous. That would be like.
I'm sure he didn't say exactly that,
sure
but I'm
did.
sure whatever he said
ridiculous.
was as ridiculous.
I'm pretty sure he did. Just spell it out.
Were there
Just
a lot of
spell it out
moments?
for everyone to know. Okay, never mind.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Well, then I'll say his obsession with Amelie was freaking annoying. Like, why? Why did he love her?
A freaking annoying obsession, you say? Almost like, what's another synonym for obsession? Fuck me. I just dropped the ball on trying to think like Kojima. An obsession, you say? An unhealthy one. Almost like a compulsion, if you will.
Oh my God.
This person's potentially dangerous fascination with this topic might cause them to become a bit crazed by it. Yeah, it's just the same thing, because it's not written in English first. Well, it technically is, but it's not written from an English-speaking guy first. So the language, this is something that we've had to learn going from Metal Gear Solid 1 to the future ones, is that whoever translates Kojima's English, who's not Blaustein, is going to do a worse job of it, and that explains why a lot of the stuff sounds as stupid as it does. Because he needs a co-writer and a localizer and does not give them a lot of freedom to shorten his long-ass translations.
I'm not the only one that was weirded out when Fragile's like, you love her. Why? Why do I love her? I don't, actually. She's just some white girl in the red dress.
Wait, yeah, I don't remember there being a lot of chemistry or romance between...
isn't.
Like, she seemed more like a Meryl than an Eva. Like, she was just a friend along for the ride, I thought. I thought Amelie was his sister and BB was his brother.
I was like, why are you loving her? Why are you so obsessed with her? Why do you want to be close to her? It's just your sister. I mean, I get it, but like, that's a little weird. It's a little weird, man.
If they used the word Oni-san, would it make more sense?
Oni-san.